Nope,
Is
Wait.
Roxanne coming?
she's coming.
She is coming that we know of.
We'll wait just a minute.
Okay. It's okay.
Give council time to look at their new fancy materials.
Where you go?
This one.
Oh, there's a backside. Oh, no. It's just different colors.
They switched us up. They put you in Brooks.
Yeah, all right. We ready? We rolling?
We're rolling.
Okay. City of Rollingwood City Council meeting will come to order on Wednesday, October 19th, 2022 at 7:02 p.m. Thank you all for being here. And we will get going with roll call. If Ms. McKee would start us off.
Roxanne McKee.
Alec Robinson.
Phil McDuffie.
Sarah Hudson.
Gavin Massengill. All right, with that, we will move directly into proclamations, Council. Happy to report that we are honoring the Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And we do have a proclamation that I will read, and I'm told that this doesn't require council approval. I just get to proclaim it. So that's what we'll be doing. Whereas Breast Cancer Awareness Month is a worldwide annual campaign in October involving thousands of organizations to highlight the importance of breast cancer awareness, education, and research. And whereas breast cancer is the second most commonly diagnosed form of cancer for women in the United States and remains the second leading cause of cancer death among women, and whereas researchers, scientists, and numerous nonprofit organizations are dedicated to discovering the cure for breast cancer, during the month of October, we acknowledge the extraordinary commitment and effort invested in this cause. And whereas we recognize that over 2.5 million Americans are breast cancer survivors that give us hope of a better future, and whereas Breast Cancer Awareness Month is an opportunity to unite all citizens in our community to prevent breast cancer deaths through increased education and regular screening. Therefore, I, Gavin Massengill, Mayor of the City of Rollingwood, do hereby proclaim October 22nd as Breast Cancer Awareness Month in the City of Rollingwood, and encourage all citizens to talk to family and friends about getting screened, and to join on activities that will increase awareness and prevention of breast cancer. Proclaimed this 19th day of October. So, consider it proclaimed.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Happy to do that, and thank you, Ashley, for bringing that to our attention. And with that, we will then move on to public comment. Do we have anyone signed up for public comment wishing to testify on items not on the agenda? Shanti, happy to recognize you.
Shanti Jayakumar, 3309 Parkers Drive. If you're wondering why I keep coming every time, I think I like your company. I like being here.
Happy to have you.
Okay, so thank you all for what you do for our community. Thanks to our staff for their service with a smile. I'm here to offer 2 announcements, a few comments and suggestions. First of all, I was told by long-standing council members that perhaps we should acknowledge a long-time residents who just passed away. I thought I would bring that to your attention. On September 25th, we lost our cherished resident, Lorraine Wheeler. She lived at 500 Vale, the house where Bluebonnets welcomed you as you drove into Rollingwood each spring. She lived there for 70 years, and her home was built in 1952, and it was the 3rd home in Rollingwood. Lorraine would have been 97 on October 26th. Lorraine worked at Capital National Bank for 20 years, and then she went on to work at her husband's office. Her husband, Preston Wheeler, was a chiropractor when that practice was frowned on as a form of healing. They didn't think it was real medicine. He is known, Preston was on the city council in 1959 and was mayor from 1963 to 1964. He passed away in 2000. He's known to have saved George Hadley, our developer, one time saved his life with his chiropractic healing. The Wheelers also donated a large chunk of the front of their property to Rollingwood on what is now Vale Street. On August 13th, we lost another longtime resident, Frankie Westbrook. She was 92. Her son, Max Westbrook, some of you know, was briefly on our police force and also on the council. Growing up during the war years, Frankie learned to fly in a single-engine, two-place plane. And afterwards, Frankie began her service at UT in the correspondence department, eventually becoming an editor for UT Press. The last paragraph of Frankie's obituary, if you have not read it, reads, and I'm quoting, "In lieu of flowers, please buy a book that some politician has determined should be banned from our libraries and ensure that the next generation receives it as a gift." And the final comment was, "It would make Frankie very happy." Now, I'm noticing that some of our street addresses on TCAD are showing Rollingwood Homes to be Westlake Hills, Texas. And this has been a problem in my mind for a long time, but I'm hoping that property and sales tax, especially the online purchases, are not directed to Westlake Hills, but rather coming to us. I hope y'all will confirm that. Then I wanted to also say we recently concluded ACL, and I want to heartily applaud our fantastic group of police officers and ably supported by the Public Works staff who created as perfect a system of traffic and safety control as can be imagined. I walked down and they offered me a bottle of water. So they were giving that out for the thirsty people. It appears, thank you, it appears that all the planning and preparedness worked with great precision and least disruption. Thank you to all who helped organize this event. That includes the city staff, of course. Thank you all. And then last question, in connection with ACL, the organizers of C3 Presents used to pay, I think Roxanne and Sarah, we were on the council at the time, we used to receive $30,000 to $40,000 a year, should be more now, for our law enforcement and other services. And I was making sure that they still pay us, and how much they pay us would be nice to know. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, Shanti. Anyone else wishing to testify? Okay, we'll remember that when we get to 9. Okay, with that, we will move on to presentations. Agenda item number 3, update regarding the November 8th, 2022 bond election. And Ashley, will you give us a little bit of an update of where we are in terms of postings and that sort of thing?
Yes, y'all will probably notice up in the park and kind of around there are signs up with election notices. That's a requirement that we have to post them in. I think it's 4 public places within the city, which we only have one real public place here. So they're down at this pavilion, up at the pavilion. You'll see them on signs taped up. We are required to have those notices out through Election Day, so we'll be checking periodically to make sure those stay up. But a big thank you to Desiree for all her hard work posting that. We also have copies here of everything if y'all would like to come look at them, as well as on our website. So I think we're right on schedule, and I think we're done with our posting now until actual Election Day. So we'll be open here as a polling place on Election Day. We are not an early voting place, but Randall's is, so pretty close by.
And then
Hill Country Middle School too.
Yes.
Yeah. And then at your desk, you have the one-pagers that we prepared. We've gotten our comms folks, worked with them and put those together. We've also given you a postcard that will go out to all the residents All of this has been vetted by our bond counsel to make sure that it is only factual, that it does not advocate for or against the measure. But we did try to put it together in a professional manner that was easy to digest for everyone. So these were printed in-house. We will do some more professional versions. We just got those wrapped up this afternoon and printed those in-house. But we'll have some professional copies for your use, and these are also posted on the website. And that QR code on the mailer then will link directly to the website, so that residents will have not only those one-pagers in PDF form, but they'll also have access to the other kind of background documentation, the resolution that came from Emergency Service District Number 9, talking about the additional $1.5 million that would potentially be available. I'll call it matching funds. It's not exactly matching funds, but that would be available in addition to our bond fund if it passes. So all of that will be available on the website. Did I miss anything on that?
No, the CIP and just other supporting material is there for your review.
Okay.
So,
Any questions, council? And I'm happy to take input on the that postcard before it goes out too. We are going to try to wrap that up in the next day or two so we can get that printed and get it in mailboxes to everyone.
You want it right now, or you want it later?
We can do it later. Why don't you just make notes and give
Yeah.
us your thoughts? And it's a rough draft. Okay, with that, we'll move on to agenda item number 4, presentation and discussion on the quarterly investment report for the fourth quarter. Abel, if you would come visit with us.
For the fourth quarter of the fiscal year, City of Rolling Wood has all its funds invested with TexPool, as you know. Ending balance with TexPool was $539,876.57. The only difference I would say probably from prior quarters is the increase in yields. At the start of the year, we were at about 3.5 basis points, and we ended up the year at 2.4% on the yield side. So interest rates have been going up, and that also is reflected on our yields. Any questions?
Any questions, council? Thank you, Abel. And with that, we'll close agenda item number 4 and move to agenda item number 5, presentation and discussion on the budget review for the fourth quarter.
This is the last review of the budget for the year. Please note the numbers you see before you are not audited numbers. They will change as the audit is performed. But preliminary numbers show that basically the general fund balance has had an uptick. Not significant, but nonetheless, the trend is upward. So I feel comfortable in saying that the financial condition of the general fund is in good shape, and I don't anticipate any drastic changes from the auditors going the other way. The same thing would be true of the water fund. Fund balance, it looks like, based on the actual numbers of revenue received and expenditures made, I would say the fund balance in the water fund will be going up. Off the top of my head, I don't remember what the amount was we started out the year with in fund balance for the water fund, but it wasn't that great. But again, we're going up. Wastewater fund, on the other hand, I would say at best it's going to be a flat increase as far as fund balance is concerned. And again, bear in mind, these are unaudited numbers. I do not know what the auditors are going to do as far as accruals, deferrals, and that kind of business. But basically, we're flat. Revenues and expenses were just about breaking even. The auditors will be here toward the end of next month, first part of December, and they normally will conclude the audit around January, February, and the audit report will be issued normally around either February or March, depending on their schedule. Any questions?
Great job, as always. Thank you, Abel. Look forward to audit time.
The drainage fund, basically what, I know we obviously had some expenditures there, but can we shed a little light on that?
The only revenue the drainage fund receives are from the fees for permit fees for site reviews. But the fund itself being charged for all the engineering costs for drainage.
Right.
So therefore, basically the drainage fund is going to have to be funded by the general fund or whatever in terms of how much cash they're in the hole.
Okay. Great.
All right, any other questions, council?
One question, just
Alec?
to follow up on that.
Yes,
So
sir.
when we went through the budget process last couple months ago in the general fund, then we have line items for those types of expenses, like for the general fund to be able to finance the drainage fund? Or-
It would have to come out of fund balance.
Okay.
Okay. All right, anything else? Going once? Thank you, Abel.
Yes, sir.
That will close agenda item number 5, move on to the consent agenda. Happy to take a motion.
I move approval of the consent agenda.
You have a motion to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Councilwoman Hudson and a second by Ms. McKee. All those in favor, or is there further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Being 4 ayes, no nays, motion carries. With that, we will move on to the regular agenda. I did get a notice that we do have someone wanting to join us for agenda item number 9 and can't be here for a little bit, so we'll do what we can. I'm going to skip number 9 and move to agenda item number 10, discussion and possible action on a recommendation from the Park Commission regarding amendments to the park rental rates for adult fitness activities. And I believe this was a Park Commission recommendation, and I will open it up for council discussion.
Mayor, I'll speak, I guess.
Yes, sir.
First. I'm the liaison, Park Commission liaison. This came up, I think if you guys recall, maybe, I don't know when it was, but earlier, maybe in January or at some point, we passed a new, I guess, fee structure for usage and rental rates and stuff in the park. Part of that was a flat fee, $25 an hour for basically all uses, field use and non-field uses and so forth. So I think some of the fitness, morning fitness classes that we had in the park, some of those vendors fell under the $25 an hour rule. And there was some concern that at that rate, it's not sustainable for those businesses. If we want to keep those types of services and amenities in the park, then we need to maybe look at adjusting prices to make it. That's where all this came from. And I think we had 2 vendors or 3 vendors at one point in the park, is my understanding. 2 of them left. We still have 1. I've heard different reasons why the 2 that were there left. One thought is that they couldn't afford the $25, so they left. I've also heard that it's possible that they already had some other facilities that and it was during COVID when they wanted to be outdoors, and so they went back to where they were indoors. So that's it. I don't know if the vote that came through, is it 6-1 for and against? I thought it was maybe 5-2, but anyway, that's how the Park Commission. And I did sit down with Melissa and Don because I think we had Ignite is one of the vendors, and they provided us with a proposal, basically a counter negotiation of like what they could pay. And the suggestion from Ignite was, hey, let's look at this way City of Austin does the pricing. It's a little bit not as straightforward. I mean, I kind of like the straightforward, just one price. but the city of Austin does some formula where it's based on the number of instructors you have, and like there's a initial fee, and then it's like how many students you have in each class. There's a little add-on. What we did is we took that formula and sort of like came up with like 4 buckets, and that's what you'll see in the proposal. I mean, in the letter that Don that's attached to this agenda item. So you'll see that there are, I think we just took that and said, okay, well, if you had four buckets, this is using the City of Austin formula, this is what you would get. After this meeting where this was voted on, someone else had like given me another way to like look at what the price per hour is with this formula, and it turns out that it's going to be somewhere between $3 and $5 an hour if you think about it that way. And I kind of wish I had like seen that or thought of that and had that discussion with the park at the time, but it is what it is, and this is where we are right now with the proposal. So it would be basically going from $25 an hour down to $5. I guess another argument that I've heard on both sides is that, there's a question of what's fair. Is it fair to charge, some people 25 and others 5? There's that kind of thought. I mean, I'm just basically trying to like educate you guys on what some of the discussion was at the park commission on it. So yeah.
All right, thank you for laying that out, Councilman. Any other opening comments from council? I'll just say, from the mayor, from an administrative standpoint, from my position and on behalf of staff, we're happy to implement whatever council decides. We're not having any issues with implementing the policy as it's written today, but again, we'll do whatever council wishes. And as I've said, typically, I will always put things on the agenda that you bring me or that a commission or board recommends, which is why this is here. And the only reason I haven't put this on the agenda before is because from an administrative standpoint, we're not having any trouble administering it. So it's the council's policy decision to make, and we'll leave it to you. And I assume that we have some folks here to testify on the issue, and we're happy to, if council has no other opening discussion, happy to open
When
it.
would these go into effect?
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
When would these fees go into effect if passed?
I assume it would be dependent on what how the motion is made.
I guess
And-
based
and-
on what you've just said, I mean, would there be any need for taking it back to Park Commission again?
I mean,
In your consideration of what it is actually per hour?
I mean, also in the interest of like kind of trying to move stuff along, I mean, I'm not sure, but I do wish that I'd kind of had that opportunity to discuss with them that angle of looking at it and price per hour. So there's, I mean, I would love to hear from some of the people that are here.
I think you're
now.
about to.
Yeah. and then I have some other thoughts too about that. Maybe how to move
Okay.
forward with it.
Okay.
Good deal. All right, with that, we'll open it to the floor and recognize whoever wants to testify, and it's sort of a first come, first served basis. So anyone that wishes to testify, and if not, that's also fine. Happy to.
Just for the scout's sake, what is the park commission's recommendation, if any? Just for clarity, because y'all are talking a lot, but none of us
A
understand.
fine point, Mr. Wong. Thank you.
Oh.
We will happily do that, and I'm going to turn it over to Ashley to give us a little bit more clarity for the record.
The current rental rate is $25 an hour. That was, I believe, approved in December of 2021. The new rate is a kind of a tiered rate depending on the hours per week used and then the size of the group. So it's an annual fee paid in quarterly chunks depending on how many people you have. 1 to 7 attendees for 1 to 5 hours per week is $1,000 a year. 1 to 7 attendees for 6 to 10 hours per week is $1,200. 8 to 20 attendees for 1 to 5 hours per week is $1,320, and then 8 to 20 attendees for 6 to 10 hours per week is $1,800 a year.
So more money on a more complicated formula, essentially, than $25 an hour.
It would actually be less.
Less.
Okay, it would be less money.
It would be
Okay.
less money, yes.
Pursuant to what Alex said, $5 or whatever
Yeah.
an hour instead of 25.
Something like that, yeah.
Okay.
And only for adults.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, happy to. All right, you were next. You want- Yeah, come on, come on up. Please identify yourself for the record, and happy to recognize you.
Good evening. This is Nicole Marisi, 4906 Timberline Drive, and I am a part of the Park Commission. And thank you so much for your time and your reconsideration of this agenda item, as well as what we've presented to you in the past as well. And just a little bit of backdrop on this to hopefully bring clarity and some just logic and fact through it. The purpose of this was to be consistent with renters that use the facilities and have a competitive rental rate within the local area. And so if we go back to a timeline, back in July of 2020, obviously we're in the middle of COVID, and the Park Commission was tasked with coming up with some key initiatives that were really relevant to help make change and bring change into to looking at the master park plan, as well as what are some areas that we could really focus in on and try to make improvements. And so this happened to be one on my agenda item where I came to the commission and I said, here's one of my items that I think we can take a look at. At that time, we were charging $180 per year for commercial vendors to come in and to be able to use our facilities. And so with the pandemic, we saw more need for using the spaces because of obvious reasons, and the pandemic forced people into different creative outlets. So what had happened is it fell through the cracks, as things do. So April of 2021, it was on the agenda. It got tabled because the length of our meeting was so long. May of 2021, it came back on the agenda. It was tabled again because of the length of our meeting was too long. At that point, we decided to form a subcommittee of myself, Phil McDuffie, and Don Hudson. And we met also with Steve Frank, who is with girls, Western Hills Little League softball, that group of participants, so that we could understand better what he goes through, etc. And so at that point, we started doing a comparative analysis to similar area rental structures. And the three of us had met numerous times. And then in June 2021, we continued meetings, and then we brought information to the July meeting there. So in July of 2021, unfortunately, it was not carried over onto our agenda item. That's my accountability. And so in August, we finally had the opportunity to present to the Park Commission. So this is a year and 2 months ago that we presented to the Park Commission the competitive analysis market rates of what's going on around us, and as well as what Western Hills Little League girls softball is paying on a quote hourly rate if you broke down their lease structure of what we pay on an annual basis, as well as I-9, who has typically their process was to come to City Council and recommend using the fields. And then City Council had established at that point about $25 an hour for I-9 to come in. So we were already using two of our leaseholders or users of our space and holding them to that $25 per hour rate. Eanes IC is $31 to $36 an hour. So again, we're in line with what was consistently already done within the City Council, as well as what our neighbors are doing around us. So then in that August 2021 meeting, City Council approved that increase in rental rate per hour. And so then the next step was to streamline application and again, do additional work to try to make this process simple for administration, as well as for understanding who's going to be on the fields at what time, and to make sure we have enough space and time for our residents to be able to use them. So eventually in January of 2022 this year, City Council did pass and write it as an ordinance, and so it became official. And then at that point, we communicated with our current vendors, I believe it was February 1st-ish, that on March 1st, the new rental rate would go into effect. And so at that time, Life Keto was here, Beat Fitness was here, and Ignite was here. And Life Keto stayed with us through the middle of June, I want to say. And then he communicated with myself and Vicky, listen, our parents want to be back in the dojo. And so we're not going to, we've appreciated so much the partnership, and we, love working here and having the kids outside here, but we're going to go back to the dojo. Completely understandable. And Beat Fitness at the time, I believe they said that we cannot afford to pay the $25 per hour, because I think she maybe had 3 to 6 clients in her classes that were coming, I want to say 2 or 3 times a week. And understandably so. We said, if there's something we can do to build a partnership to help you market and build your business, let's see what we can do. Because we want to keep you here, but we also have to look at other objectives of the Park Commission. And so then we had Nisa, I apologize if I misspeak her name, come to the Park Commission for a couple of times, because effective March 1, the new rate went into structure. And so then between that point and where we are today, there have been several conversations with the owner of Ignite, as well as her clientele and the ladies who enjoy working out with her, of trying to help understand what it is the Park Commission did and why we did it. And we have said that this is the process that we did. So that's not my place to speak on her behalf, but that's just sort of the timeline of how we got to where we're at. And then on June 1st, Ignite did add an additional class to their hourly rental rates, or hourly weekly requests. And she also acknowledged that she does pay a higher rent than $25 per hour when she goes to other Westlake locations, where she will pay $30 an hour and possibly $45 an hour, depending on which facility she uses. And so she's paying the city of Rollingwood $25 per hour. And then less than 25% of her clients are Rollingwood residents. And also that 50% of those clients reside in Eanes ISD. So a lot of what our park space is used for, as you all know, the deed is to prioritize for youth sport, Westlake, or West Bank youth activities, primarily residing here in Eanes ISD. The average cost per class ranges between, and these facts came from Nisa, so I'm not speaking, and I have emailed to show that dialogue, because what we did was we researched what our current vendors are, how many people are coming, what do they charge, how many times are they here, really wanted to understand who our vendors were and work within that structure. So the average cost per class for Ignite ranges between $9 and $15 per class, and it can be as high as $22 based on if you do unlimited packages, or if you have maybe Melissa could speak more to it because she's part of the group, but this is what I know at this point. And that the average class attendees are between 6 and 15 per class. So when you take the math of what is happening today, she's here for 8 hours a week. Let's take the average of 12 attendees per class. The cost per class on average is $12, because that's between the $9 and $15 range. So on a weekly basis, she's earning $1,152. And right now, the way we're structured at 8 hours a week, $25 per hour, is $200 that she's paying the city of Rollingwood in rental rates. So that's $952 per week. Again, this is just where I'm sharing facts with you, what I know based off of what she shared with me. So then with the current proposal that you're reviewing right now, based on the 4 different tier structures, and what that works out to per hour is in tier 1 is $3.85 per hour, tier 2 it's $2.31 per hour, tier 3 it's $5.08 per hour, and tier 4 it's $3.46 per hour. So it's a very big difference between what we're currently charging and what this proposal is suggesting. The vote, if I do recall, I want to say it was 5-2, and we had a new recent Park Commission member on the committee who, in my opinion, should have abstained from voting, because the back history behind all of this is pretty significant, and it's hard to make a determination based off of attending one Park Commission meeting. That's just my personal thought on that. And so, it's not our job to revisit a business model for a vendor who's here. We would love for her to be here to grow her market base, to be able to have more clients come, to be able to use her classes. There's such a huge benefit from it. I know, I love working out. We're a very active family, but I also think that it's fair and reasonable to hold all of our vendors accountable and not have differentiated treatment based on certain requirements that meet certain groups, and to have to define that and reignite or re-engage that entire wheel and discussion every time a vendor wants to come through. Lastly, let me think if there's anything else. I did suggest that comparing the city of Rollingwood to the city of Austin, which is what the 45 cents per person is what was proposed here, is not an accurate representation of who we are as a city. That I did put links to City of Cedar Park facility rental, City of Leander, Ames ISD, Lake Travis ISD, and if you look at any of those neighboring areas, they're very consistent with what we proposed and what we adopted as an ordinance back of January of this year. So is Ignite able to is Ignite unable to avoid the $25 per hour? That's a question that I can't answer. I do know some other facts, that they charge $169 per month for unlimited classes. And if you take the average participants, or 96 weekly participants that are here in our city using the parks, that we don't know how many of those 96 participants are unique. And we don't know how many more of them take more than one class. But let's just assume that 30% of those clients are monthly unlimited class members. So the 29 are paying $169 a month, which is $4,900 a week, or a month, and then they have $800 worth of rental fees. So it's $4,000, again, if we're making some generic assumptions, per month that this group is able to earn by staying in our space here at the current rental rate of $25 per hour. Again, this is not intended to ask people to leave. It's looking at what we're currently going through with inflation. It's also looking at currently what we're going through with other competitors in the area, and just bringing something that's fair and equitable to all the vendors that use the park space. So I'm happy to answer any questions or give you a little bit more backdrop on any of the numbers that I provided you, and did my best that I could to use the facts that I have to be able to present that to y'all.
Great. Thank you, Nicole.
Sorry.
Questions from the council?
I didn't see the anything about the rates from Cedar Park, Lander. Where was
Yeah,
that?
we didn't get any of that
Yeah.
information.
Yes,
It's
so
not in the packet. I apologize. I probably didn't think to share it with Ashley. Nicole had sent me some stuff like last week on the different city rates. I can forward it to you now if you want to see it. I can probably pull it up. Or
If you'll just send it to Ashley and we'll post it
Okay.
in the
Okay.
packet. I'm happy to do that.
So the rates that you said, Eanes and other locations are charging, that would be for a field, right?
it just depends. It could be a classroom setting. It could be out in a pavilion. It could be the 9th grade center. If you go onto the Ames ISD website, there are probably 120 different places that you could rent a space, and it begins, first of all, if you're for profit, which this is a for-profit company, they are double what it would be for a club organization, and if you're out of district. And so they also have requirements that in order to be categorized under certain tiers, that you'd have to prove residency in order to be sort of grandfathered in at a lower tier. So yes, it does, there are multiple ways, and their fee structure is consistent with regard to what type of location that you're renting.
I'm just thinking that, you know, a baseball field or a classroom, you know, baseball field is much bigger space than what the exercise classes are using. And if you're talking about classroom or the 9th grade center or something like that, it's also air conditioned, has to be, you know, air conditioned, heated, whatever, cleaned, lots of other security, you know, somebody there to lock it up and do all that stuff. There's a lot of other things that an open space, small open space in the park is not.
I do also know that,
requiring.
for example, so we have a small group of team that's 11, athletes, and I get charged the same rate if it's the lacrosse team with 100 athletes in their club. So they don't make a differentiate or preferential treatment based on the number of attendees. Also, we do allow Ignite to work out of the pavilion, which is only in our ordinances allowed to be rented for parties that are 3 hours in duration on Saturday or Sundays. So we do give them access to the pavilion, even though it's not allowed to be rented toward anybody else unless you're planning a party there. So we do want to work with them. So we don't have a pavilion rate structure for that specific area to rent out, other than if you do it for a party. We don't have one for the field house location, if that's what you're referring to. We did identify it with that location being also in the $25 per hour, because you have tables there, you have a grass area there, you have the concrete area there, you have access to the restrooms there. So there's a lot of accommodations that are really nice to be able to have the field house location as the option to be able to go ahead and conduct your business.
All valid points, but also Ignite typically uses the field house and all those things when they're up there and they're not currently being charged, you know, in addition for those facilities. So there's that. Like right now, they're just paying the fields, but typically they have lunch breaks, and oftentimes, especially in the summer, they're kind of up at the field house, I think, just because kids need to take breaks, they need water breaks, there's the tables, there's all the restroom facilities, there's all that. So that's a whole different discussion, but that is pertinent.
Great. Any other questions, council? All right. Thank you, Nicole.
My pleasure.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
All right. Next. Yes. Please identify yourself.
I'm Nisa Springman with Ignite. I'm
Great.
the infamous.
Oh,
Yeah.
welcome.
Thank you.
Hopefully not
Yeah, I
infamous.
really appreciate you all bringing this up. I so appreciate the Parks Committee, Parks Commission for hearing our plea and being willing to just, you know, I've sent emails to many of you stating all of the facts, and I'll do my best to do the same without being completely redundant. But just real fast, Mr. McDuffie, you'd mentioned Ignite a while ago, saying kind of using space upstairs. That's not us. We are just, and maybe you're referring to, was there a kids program? But we are only using the space in the mornings, either the pavilion or now that the temperatures are dropping, we will start to move upstairs by the concession area, just because that's where the sun is and where it's warm.
Yeah, that's what we're referring to as the field house, is that concession
Okay,
area.
field house,
So,
okay.
yeah.
But you had mentioned something about lunchtime, and that's not us.
I've mentioned that for I-9. That was not Ignite.
Oh, okay, got it. I must have misheard. So just to give you guys some background and into Nicole stated plenty of great facts, and I did know that these new fees were coming down the pipeline because I received your email and filled out the questionnaire, and then really hadn't heard anything about it throughout the fall of 2021. And then the first I had heard about this fee was February the 1st of 2022, and that it was going to be implemented on March the 1st of 2022. So that gave us 28 days to prepare for a significant increase. So ultimately, you know, an $800 a month that we were going to be that we were going to need to come up with those additional resources for, and in addition to pay 3 months in advance. So that was the initial part of the new policy, was it's going to be raised from $180 to now $25 a class and $180 a year. And I just want to say that is a total steal. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to rent the space for all this, you know, for all of these years for $180. And I am in complete support of you guys raising the cost, because that is a steal. And this park is beautiful. It is a gift. And just to see it alive in the morning with people working out, adults, it's very inspiring. So I believe it's an asset to you all, to your neighborhood. But what struck me as a little suffocating was from $180 to now, based on our class average and the amount of and the classes that we provided throughout the year, it was going to go from $180 to $7,600 a year annually, and we were going to need to pay quarterly, so paying for 3 months in advance for a service that we hadn't even provided yet. And with all due respect, I wish that our fees or our overhead were as simple as just paying for a rental space. But like any business, we have got plenty of fees, and I'll be happy to create a list for you guys after this. I should have had that for you to provide you. I wish that our rental space was the only thing that we were paying for in addition to our instructors. But the list goes on and on and on. And what was very difficult with hearing the significant increase too was we had just increased our prices for the first time in 7 years. The last price increase we had was in 2015. And so we increased again in January of 2022. Not knowing that this increase was going to be coming. I knew there would be some kind of increase because I was aware that this was being spoken of, but not this steep of an increase. And so it is not sustainable for us. I could not have prepared for it. I can't charge our customers enough to be able to afford this. It is just it's a beautiful space, but it's a concrete space. And currently, the indoor rental space that we are using is Synergy Dance Studio just up the street. It's $30 an hour, and it is air conditioned. It is heated. It does have a bathroom. Now, you guys have a great bathroom for an outdoor space, but there is a difference between renting an indoor space and renting an outdoor space, and the expectation that we have. For example, one day we roll up and there's just like water everywhere on the pavilion. Any other time, I wouldn't think anything about it. That's part of being outdoors. We don't mind. We want to be outdoors. But the expectation then when you're paying $25 an hour is, I need that pavilion to be spick and span. It needs to be clean. It needs to be blown off. Things, if I'm paying for that service, there's an expectation in exchange. So, again, I appreciate you hearing this out. Maybe $5 an hour is too cheap, but I do know for certain we offered, did counter offer $1,800, which would be $300 over what I would be paying for the city of Austin using the exact same time in their park. So I felt like it was a fair offer, but really it was. After this, and the reason why I fought for this for so long and have persevered is because I love this business. I love our community. We're more than a community. We are friends who share life together, who encourage one another daily, who lift one another up. From praying together to partying together, and we're inclusive. We don't want to exclude anybody who wants to be part of our community. We would love for them too. And it really is something, especially now, it's always been a gift and a blessing, but since COVID, it's even more important that we are nurturing our bodies, our holistic health, our body, mind, and spirit. And that's exactly what Ignite is. We're holistic. We love to exercise, but we also love to nourish the mind and the spirit as well. And, I would my plea to you also is just to consider to not make it more difficult on, fitness businesses. We took a humongous hit during COVID. And, I just full transparency, since it got a little personal about what, the earnings were of Ignite, I'll just say we are at our lowest numbers ever. We don't have a lot of unique visits. They're pretty much the same members who come day in and day out. I wish it were different. It just isn't right now. And we love this park. We'd love to continue to be here. The truth is, if an $1,800 a year rate isn't agreed upon, we'll have to go somewhere else and I don't know what that is. That's not your problem to solve for me, but it's not sustainable for us, and we would love nothing more than to be able to be here and continue to provide our service to the Rollingwood community, the Westlake community, and then, whomever else signs up for Ignite. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Nisa.
Sure.
Appreciate it. Any questions?
So are you at the 8 to 20 attendees?
If you
6
could come
to
back
10?
to the
Sorry,
podium. Yeah,
sorry.
that's okay.
Just trying to, so are you the 8 to 20 attendees, 6 to 10 hours per week?
Yes.
That's, okay,
Yes.
that's all I need. Thanks.
Sure.
Any other questions?
Nope.
Great. Thank you again, Nisa.
Sure.
Melissa, could identify yourself for the record?
Melissa Morrow, 2502 Timberline Drive, 23-year resident of Rollingwood and Parks Commission member, and Troop 31 Merit Badge Counselor for our community. So I'm wearing a lot of hats tonight, and also I'm a member of Ignite. I've been working out with Ignite for 12 years. I do not have a conflict of interest in it. I do not work for them, and I don't, although I do love what they do. I think what happened was, you've heard a lot of stuff that's happened, and what we're trying to do is we are trying to make sure that we keep adult fitness activities happening in our parks. There was an unintended consequence that happened when we raised the rate to $25, and what happened was Life Keto left, Beat Fitness left, and now Ignite is going to leave. And is that an unfortunate thing? Absolutely. Do we have our doors being beaten down for other adult fitness activities to come here? No. We don't have a bunch of other people coming and saying, yeah, I can't wait to pay $25 to be outside in your park and do these services. I think we're missing out, and that's what the Parks Commission was trying to address. We didn't want to lose all of our adult fitness classes. We would like to keep them. Absolutely, I think everybody already knows there's a big difference between being in an air-conditioned space with bathrooms, that you don't have to worry about the rain, you don't have to worry about the bugs, you don't have to worry about the blowers, and the spaces that we're providing. There's also a big difference. We have done individual contract for Western Hills Little League. It's not like that's not something that we haven't done. We have done that in the past, and we've done it for a long-term tenant, which I would consider a group that's been with us for 12 years serving our community, a long-term group. So I really appreciate the services that NISA provides. I'm not sure I could show up to work every morning without doing it, but I do come to the classes here, but I also drive. This morning I drove all the way out to Cuernavaca for one of the classes that was held in someone's garage. There's another location at Peace Park. There's another one at Mount Bonnell. So do I love coming to one here because I only have to drive 2 minutes? Absolutely. If I have to get back to work, early, this is way more convenient. I also think this is sort of, it's not so different than, we have a lot of issues that are going to start coming up over the next few years because we have people who paid $220,000 for their house and people who are paying $5 and $7 million for their house. What's affordable for some people is not affordable for all of our residents anymore. I think that what drove us to look for a different rate was we basically looked at who is the competitor. Where is she most likely to move this class to? And it really is that it's most likely to move to Austin. Well, how can we compete with that rate? We basically took the Austin rate, we simplified it for the staff because it does have, the Austin rate has a lot more steps, and we were really wanting to make it where the staff would only have to touch with an adult fitness class once and set a rate and then have it set, and then they can just pay quarterly. They would pay quarterly after their class, not before. Again, someone who's been here for 12 years, we know that they're probably going to pay up. I think you already have in your packets, what the dollar amount is. Some of the things that NISA hasn't really mentioned that she does beyond our classes is she really does send out a newsletter every Sunday that's sort of an informative, inspirational thing. She does lunches, she does retreats. We sometimes go on trips in the summertime. There's a lot of other things that she does for the group that builds community, that has really made it fun. It is ironic to me that we are thinking about spending RCDC funds to have coffee brought up there when we already have a group that brings people together and it is forming community. So I don't want us to lose Ignite. I will drive to wherever I have to go, but I do think it would be a big loss to our community to lose this business. I don't think they should be paying $180 a year. I definitely think it needed to go up. You know, you're right. You know, is $3 the right amount? I don't know. I just know that that's what they'd pay if they were in the city of Austin. So that's kind of how we got to this place, looking for a different fee structure. Thank you for listening. We had a great turnout for the last Parks meeting, and if you need a bunch of Ignite women to show up here for your next council meeting, I'm sure we could get them.
They're
up
always
here.
welcome.
Yeah. So, and thanks you guys for listening so well.
Thank you, Melissa. Before Melissa leaves, any questions for Melissa?
Was it a 5-2 vote or a 6-1?
I think it was, well, I know Nicole voted against it, but I don't remember anyone else who voted against it.
Lori Miles voted against it.
Oh, that's right, you're right, she
Okay.
absolutely did.
Okay.
Yep.
So it must have been 5-2.
Okay, any other questions for anyone who's testified? And is there any other testimony? Sure. You have one of those I should have said moments?
Yes, yes. Now if I can just remember what it was that I said I was thinking I should have said. Now I remember. I mentioned this in the Parks Commission meeting that I attended in June, which is what I learned in participating in all these meetings is that to maintain this park is very expensive, which I can only imagine. And that thinking that those of us who are running our businesses in the park, we have to have some kind of, we have to be accountable for that. And I understand that. And then it also came up that, well, so like right now under this fee, I'm going to be paying, you know, if let's just say, I believe, and please let me know if I'm wrong with this. If the overhead for maintaining the park is $100,000 a year, well, we're just $8,000 of it, and it was part of, you know, those of us, the vendors, to help kind of support that fee. And again, I'm $8,000 of the $100,000 that it costs to maintain. But to go a step further, because we love this park, because we truly feel part of this community, even if those of our members who live in the city of Austin come to this park, they come and they feel a part of Rollingwood. Please use us. We do want to partner with y'all. We, in the past, when y'all have done the Rollingwood run to the, what is it? I want to say run to the sun. The Rollingwood Fun Run, we've sponsored it. We're happy to help fundraise. I mean, we want to partner with y'all. That we would love to be that for you, and I would love to take advantage of the marketing that was offered to Jennifer at Beat Fitness. I mean, we would love to have y'all support, because if the more people we get to come with us, the more ways we get to show off Rollingwood Park and to make this place an even more special place. So however we can partner with y'all, we would love to, but at this rate, it's not possible to do this long term. So thank you for giving me the opportunity again.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you again.
Sure.
Any other questions?
Okay, this is my unit hang up on the fees. So it's the tiers is 1 to 7, it says 1 to 7 people for 1 to 5 hours for an annual fee. There's not enough units in here. So it's 1 to 7 people per class
You're right.
and 1 to 5 hours per week?
Right, that's right.
Okay,
It's supposed to, like, I think when Don did it, or in paper here, it was a grid.
okay.
So like 1 was like, you're in the bucket of 1 to 7, 1 to 7, 8 to 20, 8 to 20 on the attendees, and then on the top was probably like how many hours per week, and then just
Right.
filled in the things. That's sort of how it was. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I do.
And the current fee is $25 per hour.
Per hour, that's right. And if you do the math on this, taking like take the 8 to 20, the 1800 one, right? And assume 10 hours a week. If you take the max 10 hours a week at 1800 and just divide that out, I don't remember, but it comes between, all of those come between like $3 and $5, each one of those. And that's the only, that's the only thing I wish that we had presented the information that way when that vote happened, because I think it just is a different way to think about it, and it might have triggered people like, hey, wait a second, is that the right number or not? But
I don't know, I get $3.46, but
Yeah.
that's,
Well,
and that's saying 10 hours, not the 6 hours. That's maxed out.
right,
right,
exactly.
that's minimizing the cost per
Right.
hour.
Okay,
No,
if you
that's
max it out. Okay,
max.
right, right.
Yeah.
That's
Like,
true.
you're
That's
minimizing
true.
the
Right,
cost per
right,
hour.
right.
And when you look at it, it's like, what we really need to do is make sure we're covering our expenses
Right.
for renting it out. You know, this is not something that we're needing to generate, you know, a big profit for the city. We just wanna make sure that we are not incurring expenses to subsidize the class. And so if they leave, we get nothing.
True.
And, you know, they're not,
And I do
they're
think
not
there's,
bringing pizza and snacks and, you know,
right,
all of the other,
yeah.
you know, trash and things that gets left by other uses of the park. So I think they're pretty neat and tidy when they leave and have not left
Yeah.
a mess to be cleaned up as well. So
I personally have never had to clean up after Ignite. So, and I think there's a difference between concrete and the fields. I mean, when you're using the field house or the pavilion, it's a different thing. It's also a difference on the pavilion between a birthday party that we're expecting them to clean up and have more noise and all the other things that come itinerant with that than a fitness group that, you know, is adults. So there's differences.
And council, just for the record too, thanks to Ashley and Modern Technology, the rates that were mentioned earlier are now in your packet. So I don't know how she does those things, but it's magic. It's there.
Okay.
we have to reopen it though, yes.
Yep.
Here it is.
Happy to recognize Mr. Wong.
Hey, Michael Wong, 8 Inwood Circle. So the Scouts have other obligations, including a lot of homework. So I'm sure y'all have speaking time limits, and I get that we're a small city and maybe we don't enforce them.
There are no time limits.
Okay, there are any time limits. Okay, and then I don't know if y'all ever make a motion to take a vote. What I'm saying is it's kind of taking a long time, and we got to get these boys home. So if y'all wanted to do anything with these Scouts before we have to leave.
If that speeds
now would
this
be the
meeting
time.
up, we'll invite you every meeting.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to say we're about to exit, so if y'all wanted
Yeah,
to do
I think
anything.
it's coming, so hang tight.
I mean,
So I'm guessing they're all working on their citizenship in the community.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Don't want to shy them away from city government, too.
I'll make a motion, and then like y'all can read this stuff and we can debate some more. But my motion would be to approve the rates as they're written in this agenda item. But I'd like to bring this back to a council meeting in January. So essentially run it for 2 months is my thought, and then give time to like maybe look at that price again in the next couple of parks meetings, and then revisit that in January. So that would be my motion.
Okay, I'll try to reframe that for you.
Yeah.
You have a motion to approve the rates as presented by the Park Commission for a limited time and a time certain to bring it back to council in
Yeah, in the January meeting.
at the January meeting for possible further action. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
You have a motion by Councilman Robinson and a second by Mr.
I
McDuffie.
mean, I do think there's a difference. I think there's going to be an issue with I-9 with that. and I think there's a difference between the fields than
Mhm.
this, but when we're talking a limited period of time, then
Yeah.
Is the motion for adult fitness or is it for all rentals?
yeah, I'd
I
like
mean-
to amend it for adult fitness.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fine.
Okay.
I mean,
And that's, the motion is amended to,
motion
to
is
apply
amended
only to adult fitness?
only, yes, to apply only to adult fitness activities.
But wouldn't it be the same?
Hold on one second. And do you accept that? Do you still second that motion?
I do second that.
Okay, now you can talk amongst yourselves, and I'm happy to recognize anyone to testify again. Yes,
State-
but we're gonna recognize them for discussion, and then I'll recognize you, Nicole.
Yeah, there's a big difference between the number of participants in an adult fitness class and versus I-9 or the Little League or softball players. So a lot more on the youth sports activities than there are in the youth, I mean, in the adult fitness classes.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why I think it is different.
On the time of day, I think that it's used in
Yeah.
early mornings. And
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay.
But
Recognize Nicole again.
Thank you. For clarification, I-9 summer camps are larger in capacity, but their winter camps and their fall break camp and their spring break camp are not. They would definitely fall into this criterion and the structure that you're proposing here. And yes, if you have 8 children on a field, they are not going to do any more damage to that. Their ages are kindergarten through 3rd grade usually is their age that they are participating in their program, versus being in the pavilion where technically we're not even supposed to be renting that out to anybody because it doesn't fall into our ordinance. So then maybe you should suggest that we would adopt this to include pavilion rental as well on an hourly basis for groups up to this size. So I would just take those 2 points into consideration because you are going to set a precedent and show preferential treatment for one group based off of this size of attendees for this hour. And I-9's here 1 hour a week. 1 hour a week, not 5, not 10. So those are 2 other things I would ask that you take into consideration before finalizing this motion.
Thank you, Nicole. And I'll just add, back again from the administrative side, it would be easier on staff to have one standard applied across the board, as opposed to having to have different standards.
So, unlike Ignite, which I have not cleaned up after, I cannot state the same for I-9. I mean, and I've cleaned up after other people as well. So, I mean, it's not a big deal, but there is a difference, and there also is a difference between an area that basically is not being used versus an area that would be used and is being precluded from being used by a rental. So that's, to me, those are 2 different things. So, so I do think there's a difference between I-9's rental and Ignite's and renting the pavilion to a birthday party versus an adult fitness group that cleans up after themselves. They clean it prior to, they clean it after the fact. There's just a difference. And therefore, I do think it's appropriate to have different rates for different situations and different wear and tear and uses and everything else that goes with it.
Yeah, and just for the record too, a birthday rental would fall under a different
Right.
category altogether, so I
Absolutely.
didn't want that to be confusing for anyone.
So,
And I'm not arguing whether they're the same or different. I'm arguing on behalf of my staff of the implementation of it. So-
no, I know. I just think when we're talking a payment quarterly, that's not terribly onerous as far as administration of a rate.
I'll let them know that.
Okay.
I guess my only concern with adopting this now and only having it in place for 2 months is that that doesn't give her any certainty for how to establish rates for her classes for the upcoming year.
That's a valid point.
And how she plans for, you know, assessing whether she needs to look for a new place or change her rates or do anything like that. I don't see that we gain anything by pricing her out of our park. I think that we keep a lot if we can be reasonable and consistent with what it would be in the city of Austin, which is kind of our competition for keeping them here.
Yeah.
And I would urge us not to do it for 2 months because that really doesn't buy her much certainty for business planning purposes.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason, I guess one of the reasons that I suggested that was just to give the park one more chance at sort of looking at it from the price per hour standpoint versus the complicated little matrix thing that we came up with. That was the main purpose of that. But
If
All right.
you want to
we can
amend.
vote against
Yeah.
mine, and then we
Yeah.
can start
You've
again.
got the options before you. Yeah, the options before you, council, are to withdraw the motion, or you can vote the motion down and make a secondary motion that is not the same as the first motion.
I guess my inclination would be, I mean, I like the idea of having a couple of more months in case it, you know, when the park liaison is on the fence. I clearly think the rates need adjusting. I don't think there's any disagreement over that. They need to be increased. I would like to have seen the neighboring cities and school districts' charges and so forth, so we would have had more to compare. But nonetheless, I think as an interim measure to adopt the rates, to at least, you know, bring them up, bring them down for the time being, and then revisit it. I hope it would be helpful to do that, but that's what my inclination would be, just to support the motion at this point.
All right, you have a motion and a second. I'm going to call the vote if there's no withdrawal of the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 4 ayes and no nays, the motion carries. Here's your vote, Mr. Wong.
Just wait till we talk about the
Yeah, stick around. It can. Yeah, that was pretty tame.
We
And
have
here
4
I-
Boy Scouts that never want to do public service ever again, right? So,
I'm thinking that it would be the Boy Scouts that were getting impatient with it and not the leader,
Yeah.
but there we go.
All right, in the interest of the time, we will move on now. We'll close agenda item number 10, move on to agenda item move back to agenda item number 9. Discussion and possible action on a recommendation from the Park Commission regarding the installation of artificial turf infield on Hatley 1 by Western Hills Little League. And again, this is a motion that, or rather a recommendation that was passed by the Park Commission. And it's before you today. And I know we have some folks here and online. I see Mr. Smith online. I know that we've got a couple of Park Commission members here as well. And with that, I will open the floor to the council if they have any questions or opening comments. And if not, I will move on and recognize probably Melissa first. Okay, or Chad. Yep. I'll let them fight over that. But any
Yeah,
comments from?
I guess my only opening statement on this would be to just thank everybody on the Park Commission for all the the spirited debate and discussion that went on this particular topic. You know, I think I have a pretty good understanding of the arguments both for and against this proposal. So I'm also happy to, after we hear from everybody, answer any questions that you guys might have, other
Okay.
members of the council. So that's it.
Thank you, Park Liaison Robinson. And with that, we'll move to comments from those who are here to testify on the issue. I see Mr. Smith with his hand raised. So, Chad, if it's okay with you, we'll start with you, and then I'll move on to others who.
Yeah,
might-
that'd be great. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Well, my name's Chad Smith. I'm on the Parks Commission. I also serve on the Western Hills Little League Board. I also played on the Hatley Fields back in 1983 and have coached on them off and on ever since. So I've got a vested interest here. I think if we were to allow this would take our field, number one, from being a currently below average baseball field to one of the best in the city that everybody's really proud of. That's certainly what's happened at Joseph Field down at Infield and Exposition. Making this change would make the field much safer for the kids on ground balls, on sliding into bases, on sprained ankles, just in numerous ways. We'll have a lot safer environment for the children. In addition, this allows us to play after rains and get more games in. In that respect, it takes stress off the fields 3, 4, and 5 because we can play all the games on field 1 and spend less time on 3, 4, and 5 right after rains. We are able to control the drainage if we install this surface and decide exactly where we want it to go. We can use the surface for other activities like yoga. We've got an opportunity here for Western Hills to pay $100,000 that they're not otherwise obligated to make this a better park. And lastly, I think if Ashley can show those pictures, I know they're in the packet, of what it looks like just optically, it's going to take the maintenance obligations off of the city and off of Western Hills. All we really have to maintain is the outfield grass. We go through maybe twice a year and do a vacuuming of the turf, and that's all the maintenance required. So really it's Western Hills spending a lot of money up front for 8 to 10 years of very little maintenance, and in my opinion at least, a very pretty field. So thank y'all for considering it.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. I appreciate those comments. Any questions for Mr. Smith? All right, hearing none. Others who wish to testify? I see some folks. Ms. Morrow, if you'll identify yourself for the record.
Melissa Morrow, 2502 Timberline Drive. I'm on the Parks Commission, and I'm also the executive director of the facility that Joseph Field sits on. So part of the reasons that, or one of the reasons that I actually volunteered for this Parks Commission was because of the expertise that I've gotten over the last 10 years working with youth fields. Very similar kind of size of property. I have to tell you that when Western Hills Little League came to WEA 5 years ago and said, hey, we want to put in a turf field, I thought they were crazy. I thought it was going to be too expensive. I wasn't sure how it was going to be maintained. I was not that crazy about it. And now I am like the biggest convert ever. It has been changed our ability to use that field more consistently, especially after rains, but also it's reduced the maintenance that's required. For those of you who don't know a lot about maintaining a baseball field, the infield is the thing that takes you so much time. You have to rake it, you have to line it. Even if you have multiple games in one day, you actually have to do all that again. It's not like mowing where you do it once every 2 or 3 weeks. this is something that you might have to do 3 times a day. And so by putting in a turf just in the infield, leaving the outfield as grass, you're maximizing sort of strategically where the maintenance time always ends up. It's really beautiful to look at, actually. I mean, you're kind of shocked at how pretty it looks. The lip between the regular grass and the turf, KMI did a really good job, which is the same group that they're planning to have come again. I couldn't see if a representative from KMI was here, but we did have them come to our Parks Commission meeting, and I highly recommend, if you guys have questions, to have them answer them, because I do think that's part of why we were able to pass it at the Parks meeting, was because KMI has done this all over the country. In fact, the guy who came to our meeting is in Louisiana right now installing a field. And they're super professional, do a good job. They did everything on time. They kept it really safe. So it's not, you know, it does mean we just signed an agreement with Western Hills Little League for the next 10 years. I think we're probably year 2. So in terms of like maximizing, I imagine one of these fields, I think the lifespan is around 10 to 12 years. Although honestly, I know the ones over at Hill Country, they replaced after about 8 years because of the heat. But of course, that's out of middle school with a ton of kids using it all the time. I imagine our field will be, probably will get 10 years use out of it. What else? Safety, definitely want to piggyback on what Chad said. I've been really impressed with, again, less turned ankles, less balls that pop up in a weird direction at kids. The kids love it. You ask your kids once they've played on turf and now they're playing back on grass, they're like, they'll ask, well, you know, which one am I going to practice to? And you say, I'm sorry, we're going to be on grass today. And they're like, ugh. The one downside that I will say, and you know, I don't think it'll be that big of an issue for us, is that it is hot. They're hotter than a regular grass. That's again one of the things that I love about only doing the infield and not doing the outfield as well, is that you do get a little bit of break from the heat, etc., by keeping the grass in the other part. I think that's about it. But overall, I think it would be a good investment. And honestly, when was the last time Western Hills Little League offered to make a $100,000 improvement in our fields? I mean, I think this is a huge gift that we ought to take and really think about putting in. In the motion that I did at the Parks meeting, I did include that Western Hills Little League would be responsible for the full cost of it and the maintenance for the next 10 years or for their lease. And we also put in something in that if for some reason we wanted to remove it, would be for them to put in, KMI gave us a quote on how much it would cost to remove the turf field. If we could put in escrow that dollar amount, so that if for some reason 8-10 years down the road we hate it and it didn't work for us, that we could remove it and just have it be back to grass. But anyway, that's it for me. If y'all have any questions.
I do. So does that include remediating the earth and taking it all the way back? Do you know what that dollar amount was?
Is KMI on?
We don't believe they are.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Chad, do you remember what that dollar amount was?
I want to say it was around $15,000 or $20,000.
That's what I was gonna guess, 15 to 20.
And we've already agreed that Western Hills would be responsible for that amount at the expiration of the lease if elected by the city.
I mean, my impression, I mean, KMI obviously knows more than I do about the cost, but my impression at that moment was like, hey, I want to double check that, check that number.
Yeah, I would too.
So, 'cause it seemed kind of low.
The
other thing was like, I remember at that point, the question was like, Frazie's like, what? No one ever asked us to remove them. So that's just one thing I'll say.
And that is one thing I'd say, you know, Eanes School District, there hasn't been a single turf field they've put in that they haven't replaced with another turf field. They haven't gone back and put grass anywhere so far.
You also said that all the kids typically go to that field, want to play on that field. Is there the variety of ages? Because I know we have all the different configurations based on age. So how does that work when you know, you've only got one configuration over on field number one.
You actually can build it with multiple configurations. So you can build it with, you can still use the same base path, but put the bases at different locations.
They just plop them in
Yep.
different spots.
Mhm.
Okay. And then,
And there's usually just like 2 or 3, you know, different variations for those age groups of base lengths up to 12 years old.
But this one is only used for the 9-year-olds, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that wouldn't need,
it would have a
Multiple,
different
they-
look than that, then it would have to. I mean,
Well, honestly, we have it on ours. There's 2 different links you can put the bases at, so that you can kind of shrink it down.
Oh, I have
It's
to
not
revisit.
exactly where the lines are, but
okay.
yeah.
is it striped differently?
No, I don't know how it works, but it does. I guess it just draws it down. I don't
Yeah,
know.
they just move all the bases.
Yeah.
Huh.
But there's just a little, like a lock latch thing that you can
Yeah.
take the base off and then latch it to the other one. It's a
Also-
common thing in baseball fields.
Also
Yes, it
changes
is.
the location of the
I can
pitcher's
confirm that.
mound.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
It says also changes the location of the pitcher's mound if you
Yes,
are
and
going
you can
from
move
a
the pitcher's
different.
mound as well.
different-
We have 2 different removable pitcher's mounds. Those are, again, which is a great thing, because having to rebuild the mound all the time is one of the big maintenance things that you have to do during games. And so, but those mounds actually can move to 2 different locations. You can have 2 different set places that you can put them. I don't know what Western Hills Little League is planning, like in terms of that, but I'm sure they can work around it.
I mean, that field has been that size for decades. you know.
Joseph Field.
I mean, well, this one
Yeah.
has been that size for decades. It has not been used for multiple age groups.
Right.
So I don't think that would be necessary.
Yeah.
But
And just weighing in, well, first of all, thank you. I know that you helped give some tours and were very thoughtful in that approach, and thank you for all your work on that. Appreciate your comments tonight and your overview and explanation. And I'll just, again, on behalf of kind of the city and our public works staff, I do think that there's some, definitely some benefit related to the maintenance aspect of this, and I do appreciate that and would welcome it, so thank you.
So I have a couple of questions. You've talked about the heat on the AstroTurf, and obviously there's a lot of sliding in baseball. So do the kids get burned?
Not really, and
Scraped out?
most of them wear pants in
Uh-huh.
baseball, so it's not any worse than the chalk and the, the gravel that you normally have, the
Okay.
red stuff. At least we haven't had any more injuries or anything like that related to the turf field differently than any of the other ones. In fact, we've had less. Again, I think it's because part of it is kids don't take missteps, because when you have natural ground, there's dips and things that happen, whereas that is it's just so smooth. You know exactly where your next step is going to be. So in some ways you can commit more. Like, I think that's why you can kind of go faster, so you don't have to slide as often. I mean, I don't know all the technicality of why a turf field seems to be a lot easier. And these are not the fields, I know some people remember like the Astrodome, and it was like concrete and then barely any. This stuff actually has it's like a little rubber pellet that there's these pieces of grass that stand up, and then there are these pellets that actually sit in there. So when you go, even when you're running on it or exercising on it, you feel a little spring to your step more than you do like a gym floor or even grass.
I could have brought you some for my laundry room.
Yeah.
Right, Nicole?
You pick up a lot of that.
Yeah.
Familiar with that?
Yeah.
And then in terms of drainage, there is a small lip that goes around the entire outside. And again, KMI can speak to this better, but I did take multiple pictures of each layer. It's like putting in a massive French drain. So it does drain really. That's the whole point, is you want to be able to play like right after a huge pour. So that thing does drain really well. You do want to make sure, and again, that would be something that KMI would sort of tell us, Val, how do you want that to drain out? Some of it will go straight into the ground, and then some of it can be,
It actually contains a lot of it too while it drains too. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions for Melissa?
So is there documentation, and I mean, the question's been raised about, because we haven't looked at any contracts, any proposed contract, which would be helpful. Take a look at the warranty and some of the promises being made. But is there anything that would void the manufacturer's warranty if others are using the field?
You'd have to ask KMI to kind of say that. I mean, I do know that there are turf fields in the city of Austin that are open to the public. So, but I don't know how their warranty works.
The other thing on the warranty side I would be curious about is like maintenance schedule, because if in the packet there's a document that describes what you're supposed to do, and this kind of, like, I know what Chad had mentioned earlier, that hey, they do it a couple times a year or whatever it is. If you're following this like playbook that they gave us, it's like daily, you're supposed to do some weekly, monthly, and if you're not following that, could that be used against you for warranty claims?
I got the impression, and again, I can't speak for Western Hills Little League because I don't work for them, and I'm not on their board, and I don't work for KMI either. But I believe that the warranty will be with KMI, and they're the ones who Western Hills Little will contract for the maintenance. So it's like you're kind of contracting with the group that's going to maintain the warranty.
Okay.
I do think it's really important, and I said this over and over again, and when I made a motion was, to me, this is not going to be a field that gets locked up and no one but baseball can use it. It really has to be that Western Hills Little League and we all feel good about it being a field that can be open to the public when baseball is not happening. And if we're not all good with that, then at least when I made the motion, that was the intention, that it would be used by others.
And Councilman, should you make a motion too, as part of that motion, we'd be happy to, have me work with council to make sure those issues are covered. So, I see you. 1 second. Any other questions for Melissa?
I guess the only other thing is that I know you talked about the drainage, but would there be, as far as you know, any additional issues with drainage coming off the park and coming down the hill over to here to City Hall?
That'll be something KMI has to tell you. I'm not a drainage expert. I will say for our field, we didn't have any additional drainage off of the field after installing this. It was no different than when we had grass there. If anything, I'd say there was less water coming off, and obviously, and pooling anywhere. It just didn't pool anywhere. It just went down. But that Joseph Field in particular, it drains to the back, and we don't see any more than we used to. There's no, it's not more than it was before. But I can't say that this is a different topography,
right?
And a different subsoil.
I just didn't know if that had been explored by the Park Commission in the course of this.
KMI assured us that they could make the drainage do wherever we wanted it to be, that they could make sure that it followed what it does now, basically. If you want it to drain how it does before, then they can have it drain the way that it is right now. I've never come over here during a heavy rain. I don't really know what this baseball field looks like after a heavy rain. I mean, I don't know how it drains.
If you get out at the next rain, you'll see
I
all of
promise
us
to do
out
that.
there. We all meet up on the streets. It's a whole thing. Yeah. Thank you, Melissa. Appreciate it. All right. Welcome, and just identify yourself for the record.
Yes, I'm Jess Butler. I live at 4822 Rollingwood Drive. I've lived here for over 30 years with my family, and we love Rollingwood. We love Rollingwood Park. We live right across the street from the park, so the front windows of our home look at Hatley Field 1, 2, and 3, and we walk in the park every day. I'd like to give a different perspective than what's been shared, and I would like to compliment the Park Commission, not just my appreciation for their volunteering to serve, but the courtesy they showed my wife and me, and the way they showed courtesy to each other, even though it was a split vote, and it didn't go the way I hoped it would. The truth is, I appreciate their volunteering, and I believe their intentions are really good as far as the Little League and how it might save them time and effort as maintenance and these things. But there are serious issues that the council needs to look at. Polyethylene pile fiber is held together with tire rubber crumb, which is recycled tires. When children slide into third base, they're not going to get dirt on their hands. They're going to get, you can pick it up with your hands, black pebble film, sandy, black, recycled tires. The draining of the field does go into 2 pits. It has to be filtered. Some states have laws saying it can't be released into streams because often exceeds what's allowed because it's chemicals, and it's going into 2 pits. They want to put them in our park, and they could have lead, zinc. Who knows what would go into those pits? But we should respect water. We should respect the environment. To put a plastic sheet over the infield, the pictures may look good to you, but to me, the natural field, it's in the eye of the beholder. The natural field is beautiful. We have a natural park. If you've walked on St. Joseph's Field, or on Joseph's Field, you'll pick up an odor, a smell of rubber. If it's over 95 degrees, my wife and I have been there several times. After the last park commission meeting, we went over, it was 97 degrees that day. We had both laser temperature gauges and the old-fashioned temperature gauges. We measured the outfield. It was 97 degrees. The outfield was 101, just a few degrees more. We stepped onto the infield, measured the infield. It was 156 degrees. I have pictures of the temperature gauges. I just showed them to Shante. She saw them. I can give them to you. That's 55 degrees. It's dramatic when you step on. And we didn't understand how they could build a field that's not playable. When we walked to our car and went to the asphalt parking lot, a black parking lot, it was 130 degrees. The infield of the baseball field was hotter than the black parking lot. Well, the answer is actually in your packet. Look in your packet on page 56. It says here, players and trainers prefer wet turf down to wet the turf down during use in order to lower the temperature. This is a good idea and recommended because in periods of very hot weather, a wet field provides evaporation and indeed lowers the temperature. They have a sample on a practice field. You want to play in a 95-degree day? This is in your packet. At 3:30 in the afternoon, you start watering at 10 a.m. to get the temperature down. Come back at 12:30, water again. Come back at 2:45 just before the game to get the temperature down and make it safe for children to play. I am totally confident after listening to people who serve with Western Hills and our park commission, they will water this field if needed. They're going to try to keep our children safe. What about when the season's over? I was a little t-ball coach. My children played t-ball, Little League. My daughter plays softball. We support sports. We support all of the people who play over there with their children. We want to keep them safe. But what about when those games are over? The infield will be unusable to our community year-round. We had 68 days over 100 degrees and many days over 95. I'm not making this up. Look at the research on this and you'll see there are signs, hazard signs on fields in Arizona, Pennsylvania, Washington, warning people about the heat and warning them about taking baths after they play and washing clothes. That's a fact. This is serious business. We should respect the environment. We should respect water. It's the source of all life. Why would we do that to water in the middle of the heart and soul of our city? Why would we do that to water and put it in pits and take it away from the trees and the wildlife? I like to see birds, bees, flowers. I like to see insects on that field. I would like to respect wildlife and the environment. And I say, let's let kids play on natural grass and let's respect the environment and not make a heat zone over there because that heat zone is dramatic. The Little League games will be over in the spring, and then here we are in the summer. When my grandkids come and want to play with granddad, they often come to this field before they come in my home. And my grandson selected the All-Star team in League City He loves to pitch. I don't catch for that guy. Not now in middle school. We won't be able to play on that field. We're not going to water it down. It's not available for year-round use to the community. It doesn't fit the aesthetic of Rollingwood, which is a natural, beautiful park. We're trying to bring in wildlife to the park and beauty through flowers and trees. It's dedicated to sports year-round. Kids were playing football today. We support softball, baseball. But to put a plastic sheet over the infield and then run it into drains and not release that water to the environment, that is not Rollingwood. It's not in the best interest of our city. And I ask you to let the kids play on grass. Thanks for listening to me.
Thank you. Appreciate any questions?
I have the pictures of the temperatures. We've been there several times. We've done a lot of research. I've looked at doctoral dissertations on this. There was a flurry in 2010 just about the dangers of the fields. I was trying to find a direct link to give you. There are concerns, but they don't have direct links right now to cancer because they don't have a long enough time that I've been able to find. But there are serious concerns about kids being heat exhaustion, serious concerns about cuts on knees that don't heal as a result of artificial turf. Look at the chemicals they clean the field with. Read your packet. I know you have. Read that packet. The warranty's invalidated if you don't vacuum the thing with certain kinds of sweepers, cleaners. I would ask you to study this and think carefully about putting our children on fake polyethylene carpets and then running water into pits and thinking that's good just because the adults want to be convenient and not reschedule a game for a rain day. We're not having that many rain days to reschedule. So please give this careful thought and do your research and ask our city manager to do even more research. There are dissertations written on this, and it's a serious decision.
Okay, thanks again. I've got two hands raised. Hold on online. I'll recognize Mr. Hinton first, and then we'll come back to you, Mr. Smith, and then Shanti. So, Mr. Hinton?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. John Hinton to Jeffrey Cove. This is a really big decision, and there's a lot of things that I think that maybe some more time maybe should be taken in terms of deciding what all the comments that have been raised, both positive and negative. My concern is actually with the water and the drainage. I think that this is so important that maybe the city engineer should review this proposal related to the water. Where is this water going to go? Is it going to exacerbate existing drainage problems? That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hinton. I appreciate that. Any questions for Mr. Hinton? All right, and with that, we'll move on to or back to Mr. Smith. Or actually, since you've already gone once, Shanti, did you want to say a few words? Okay, either one. Well, you haven't gone yet, so.
I have digging through some of my many files. It's not funny, but I have this. I think I have just 5 copies. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. Please take a look at number 4, exhibit number 2 and number 4. So I can refer.
Oh, that's fine.
Sorry. Before I say anything, I just want y'all to take a look at exhibit 2 and exhibit 4. This was a study done in 2014 by LNV, the engineers at the time, and it's a drainage of Rollingwood Community Park. And I was looking at this, I accidentally found it in my files, and realized that there's a lot of drainage situation coming off of the ball fields, and when they looked at it. And then exhibit 4, there's some solutions, but Exhibit 4 shows the further deterioration and water coming down to City Hall. And some of us that were on the council at the time in 2009 and 10, remember Frank had to rebuild part of the portion of the garage because the water had seeped in from the upper level. And we've had that along the whole, because we built the $14,000 wall, so some of that water was contained from coming down in the rocks. So we do have a situation in the upper park that can cause, this is 2014, but not much has changed. In fact, some more deterioration has taken place. Okay, so basically what I wanted to say is, the Hatley Park was once a quarry, and that was filled with the fill that was coming in from the construction of Bee Cave Road, and people like Freddie Muller, some of us remember Freddie, would flag down these big old trucks and say, come fill up what became later the field. So it's all compacted dirt. Therefore, we do have drainage issues, like the water that's always standing between the Shah's house and Jess Butler's house. And then on this side, we have seen both Kay Freese's 98-page document on drainage, which shows you where the drainage goes. It comes down here, comes through here, gets back on Nixon, and guess where? Our biggest basin, where we are fixing to spend $1 million. And again, you may be able to contain the water like they say here, but it is something when you are adding 10,849 square feet of dirt being removed to set a base layer and then put the artificial turf. Again, I'm not an engineer, but this is something that an engineering study is warranted and a drainage study is warranted, in my opinion. And I was also concerned about different things on this KMI. Again, first of all, two things. The letter that came from Western Hills, no date on the delivery, there's no date at all, okay? Letters like this should have a date. So I don't know how good this is. And one comment here says that the purpose for the change is to make the fields safer for the children, lessen the maintenance obligation on the city and the Little League Corporation, reduce the amounts of rainouts, and make Field 1 more usable and attractive for all users of the park. So my question is, after spending $100,000, it's like gold plating in my mind. $100,000 is a lot of money to spend on one field. How much time can ordinary public be allowed to go there? Can we go throw a frisbee there with our kids? Can we go there and fly a kite? Oh, and we can't land the helicopter during National Night Out. Think about it. Maybe we'll do it on another field. But there are a lot of things we use that field, and I looked at how many days in a year we, the public, get the use of our park. 90 days. If you look at the agreement between Western Hills Little League and us for the 15-year lease, it shows you that from February, they have the exclusive use of the field February 1st through June 30th and August 1st to November 30th. And then again from July 1st to July 30th. And then, of course, on Saturdays and Sundays they use it the whole day, but Monday through Friday is 4 to 9. But if I take out those months, we have January 1st to January 31st, 30 days, July 1st to July 31st, with some exclusions, 30 days, December 1st to December 31st, 30 days. I never looked at it that way. I always thought, oh, those fields, except when the kids are playing. Of course, they need first priority in my mind. Kids get to play. But we get to use the fields too, and that's only 90 days. So that's a problem. And on the KMI quote, again, the quote was May 12, 22, and it said here this is only, it expires in 15 days. I'm a stickler for dates, as you can see. It troubles me that that's the same piece of paper that we have in our packet. The drainage pipes, the locations. As far as I can see, on Joseph Field, it's all flat. I've not been there, but I can only see it's flat. We have a different situation. And we have a situation, if you look at the information I gave you, that is already draining down the slope and eroding the soil and going down back to where we don't want it to go. So again, an engineering study is utmost necessary. And something that we do with our park, our beloved park, the crown jewel of Rollingwood, according to the comprehensive task force that you all adopted recently after 1 year of work on it, that is what everybody calls it. It's our crown jewel. We need to protect it. So all of us, regardless of age, can use it as much as we want to. This is all we have. So without community input, just on the basis of KMI, Western Hills Little League, Melissa, I treasure everything you say, and I've always have. But in this case, I'm going to step aside and think about the larger community and how we can use it. When my kids were growing up, we didn't have a park. We didn't have any of those facilities that they have now. And I think it's good that we are changing and we are accommodating our children. They are our treasure. I have grandkids now. So it's not like I'm grown old and don't know what kids go through. I want the kids here. So I think community input, engineering study for drainage, engineering study for how that will affect us, and then all the other points that have been brought up about the turf. And there was some more information that I think Brooke Brown had put in, and I think Victoria Johnson sent some more research. So my feeling is not to rush into something tonight. We really, really need to think through this. Another month is not going to make a difference when it comes to our park. Once it is gone, I know, 8 years, 10 years, whatever, it's not the same. It just is not the same. So please, all of you, think about yourselves as part of the larger Rollingwood community and do what you think is the best for us at large. Okay? I have a lot more, but I'm running out of steam here. So anyway.
Thank you,
We
Shanti.
can talk later.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Yes, Roxanne.
Could I ask a question of either Melissa or, is Chad still there? Yeah,
Chad
there he
just
is.
Yes.
came on.
I'm happy to, if ask your question, then we'll recognize whoever.
Okay, my question is when this watering of the fields takes place, to get the fields cool enough for the kids to play, in your experience, how many thousand gallons are we looking at? You know, how much water are you using to cool off that field?
We've never done that.
You've never done that?
Never.
Do
We
the-
don't have sprinklers for it. We never installed any water. We don't.
And that doesn't ruin
So-
the warranty on it?
No.
If you're not?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, like our warranty, or at least ours, doesn't require us to water it.
Don't you play night games?
Well, so we have games, it does really matter the season that you're in,
Uh-huh.
because quite frankly, the hottest is August. We don't really play in August. We don't play in July. The fall ball runs September 1, so the worst time really is September. And we usually start games at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Now, of course, over in Joseph, we have lights. So we have the benefit of, being able to use it more in the evening. What was your question again? Sorry.
It was about
Oh,
how much
about the
water was
Yeah,
used.
so we're not watering them at all. And then our spring season runs from
Melissa, can you
February-
get up
I'm
the
sorry.
mic just so that it'll be
Yeah, thank
more
you.
recorded?
Yeah, and of
Thanks.
course Chad can answer all these things too, but I do happen to know their schedule. So their spring season runs February 1 until basically the end of May, and then they have All Stars in June and July. Usually, I mean, y'all don't realize, maybe you don't think about it, but it's not that hot really from February to May. So actually it's kind of nice when it's a little warmer on the turf field when the sun comes out during the spring. And then in the fall, we run September to like mid-November. So yeah, we just don't use, at least, and
You don't do the watering.
yeah, we don't do the watering, and we don't water it when it's not being used. And actually, WEA does use, we use our summer camps, believe it or not, Champions Gymnastics and Sport Ball and Soccer Shots, they do get on that turf field in the summertime, but only up until about noon, and then they don't use it. But
And
we
why
use it the
don't they?
whole summer.
Why don't they
Because
use
it's
it?
too hot. I mean,
Okay.
but we actually don't get on our regular field either after 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, because it's so hot in the summertime. And if kids have already been outside for 4 hours, especially with a summer like this, it's just too long for them to be outside. It doesn't really matter whether they're on grass or turf. I don't doubt that it was 152 degrees, but I mean, I am on that field every day, all year long, and I think I stood out there with somebody recently, maybe it was Phil, and it was hot. I mean, we were out there on a day where it was like 90 degrees. I don't think it was 150 degrees. Because I don't think I could stand out there if it was. I don't know how that works. I do know.
Well, I mean, it's the surface temperature
Yeah.
and then it versus the ambient temperature.
Yeah.
So
There
there's-
you go.
But,
Okay, so that
But all the Eanes kids, I mean, go
Yeah.
out there all summer and every field is packed
Yeah,
all day,
with
every
turf.
day.
Yeah.
So, thank you, Melissa. Did that answer your question, Roxanne?
It did, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. I think we have Chad with his hand raised still, and we'll recognize Mr. Smith.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. I really want to just hit on a couple of things from the baseball side that I've heard talked about, because I do think this is a no-doubter that the city of Rolling Wood should jump on. First of all, on the sliding, it's much easier on the turf than it is in the dirt. The first thing we have to teach kids is not to slide too far. They get the biggest kick out of starting their slide in their normal position and then sliding about 5 or 6 feet past the bag. And it's very safe with the small sliding pellets. They realize they don't get strawberries nearly as much. By that, I mean scrapes on their knees. Second point, we will use it for games for all ages on Saturdays and Sundays when it rains. And we'll cancel the practices that are scheduled on field 1 and play all the games that would have been played on 3, 4, and 5 on field 1, which will take all the pressure off of 3, 4, and 5. We will use it for all the way from 5-year-olds all the way through 9, 11-year-olds. Our warranty claims, KMI has told us what we're currently doing has kept our warranty in place. And that's the grooming that I talked about happens maybe twice a year. I'm currently watching adult softball and adult baseball being played on field 1, and I think this will only help that. And that's outside of the normal times that the Little League's using it. So I'm pleased to see that and have seen it several evenings over the last few weeks. There will be no additional drainage, but we can now direct and guide the drainage however we want to. So if we decide we want to throw it to a holding tank or disperse it somewhere else, we can. As in its current configuration, baseball field 1 turns into a swamp and doesn't drain very well at all. And it requires probably 2 or 3 days of sunshine before they can play baseball on it again. And it's always been that way. I will say that Little League plays out there on Joseph in 100-degree days through July, and both the players and the coaches prefer the turf over a dirt infield. At that time, dirt infield just feels hot. It feels dustier, and with the sun baking off the dirt, they just prefer the turf. And on my last point, if we're going to have any chance to play baseball on a turf field in the spring, we need a decision pretty soon. We tried to bring this up in the late spring, hoping we could install the turf over the summer for the fall. It's about a 6 to 8 week wait time, and then probably 3 to 4 weeks to install it. So if we don't do it now, we're probably looking at no decision until summertime, and at that point, I don't know if we'll still have the Western Hills backing of doing this. So I'd appreciate everybody just taking that into consideration when you decide.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Any additional questions for Mr. Smith? Okay, council. I think we've had what I would call a robust discussion on this one. We do have some other agenda items, so happy to recognize council and accept a motion if you have one.
Say that we did get a lot of information that is not in the packet, and so it was not provided available for other people to review. All the information that Victoria researched and submitted is not attached to the packet. We didn't get that until yesterday, so I did not have time to go through that. She's done some extensive research. I did talk to her today to try and get kind of an executive summary since I didn't have time to read it all. She voted for this at her first meeting without much background. Nicole is trying to discount her vote on the last item because of that. So if that vote was removed from this, it would have been tied from Park Commission standpoint. She did say that based on what she has found so far, she would have voted the other way now. And I would like to have a chance to go through that. She's also waiting on some additional information from Texas A&M on different types of grass that could be installed. Also mentioned the maintenance. When she asked about the maintenance at the Park Commission, it was not very well described. So she was concerned about that also. I will say that those little rubber chips get into everything. And I think my son still has some embedded in his hip from football at Westlake, and the trainer told him it made him look tough, and so he didn't want it taken out at the time, which I thought was crazy, but you know, I think it's probably still there. So you can still get injuries from sliding on that as well. But I would like to be able to look at the additional information that Victoria has gathered before taking a vote on this myself.
Okay. The only thing I'll say on the A&M study is next year we could go to the Texas Turfgrass Association Summer Conference, which is also hosted at Texas A&M. So not saying that the Turfgrass Association might have a vested interest in that study, but there's also a sponsorship form for their Turfgrass and Landscape Association program if you'd like to see it. So,
there you go.
but happy to get you additional research if you want it.
Well, we got a bunch of additional research.
I
I
know.
just, like I said,
Probably all
did not-
sponsored by the Turfgrass Association.
did not have a chance to look it over. So.
Yeah.
So Sarah, are you suggesting look at it next month or just,
Yeah, I mean, at this point, I would not vote in favor because I have not had a chance to look through all of the other information that was provided after the vote by Park Commission, which was very close and again would have been different were it taken again. So.
Looks like two things are coming back to Park Commission.
This one actually wouldn't come back to
We
you.
did
We
send
would
it.
we would provide the documentation to council, and then it would be my intent to bring it back to you next month after you've had it. If you're requesting more time to look at the documentation that did not have time to go in the packet. We're happy to provide that to council, put it in the packet for the public, and then bring it back if that's council's wish. I will give you one more chance to make a motion, and if I don't hear one, I am going to move on since we've kind of hit a...
I move we table this item until time certain next council meeting.
You've heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Heard a motion from Councilwoman Hudson, a second by Mr. Robinson. Please, no further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 4 ayes, no nays, motion carries. With that, we'll move on to agenda item number 11. Possibly greener pastures, no pun intended. Discussion and possible action on a recommendation from the Park Commission to allow pavilion rental during weekdays when school is not in session. Please don't let this be controversial.
Yeah,
But I see it-
think that this is for. I want to discuss just one thing.
Yeah, nope.
Because this is just for the. Yeah, well, that and also for when school's not in session. So I look. The next council meeting is November 16th. Because I did get some community feedback that was pretty negative on this idea.
Of course.
So I say I would like to, again, whatever the motion you made last time,
Table it.
table to the next commission meeting, because it's not going to make a difference. People will still be able to rent the pavilion for December or whatever. Anyway, next time, and they'll give me more chance to like talk to these.
Was there a reason why it was only proposed not when school is in session?
Yeah, I don't understand that was another thing, is what was the reasoning why we, just like 6 months ago, we passed this to be just the weekends. Why did we decide to change it to be other days during the week?
I'll recognize.
When before this, there was no rental of the pavilion. That's the thing. Before we for a number of years, I think there was no rental, and then we passed the rental, and it was just the weekend limited, and now it seems like we're trying to be more flexible.
Okay. Clarification, I will recognize Nicole here in a second. Was that a motion? I was a little unclear.
No, it's not.
Okay,
Not yet.
okay. No motions on the table. And with that, I will recognize Nicole to maybe clarify some of this.
Nicole Marisi, 4906 Timberline Drive, and I've been a part of the Park Commission, also worked on this as a subcommittee. And not to correct you, Councilperson Alec, if that's how you refer to you politely, I apologize. The pavilion rentals have been in an ordinance for many, many years, always to be rented on a Saturday or Sunday between 2 time slots, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. or 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. And that has been the way it's been for as long as I could recall. So we could get back on the yearly understanding of that. So then what had happened is when school is not in session, so let's take Labor Day, and a parent wants to plan their child's birthday party because they're not in school, and it's easy to get grandparents to come in. It's a non-working day. And the request was reached out to me to say, well, I know you were involved with preparing and passing through the new process. Can I rent this for my child? I'm a Rollingwood resident on Labor Day because there's no school. And I said, according to our ordinances, you may not. You have to rent it on a Saturday or Sunday. And so then that resident called Vicky and asked, what is the procedure if I would like to rent the pavilion for my son's 9-year-old birthday party? And she said, well, it's first come, first serve. You cannot rent it from us on a Monday, on Labor Day, because we don't have that ability to do so. So when I received that phone call, that is when I brought this to the Park Commission to share that specific example that during the summer months when there's no school in session, we're not asking to increase the amount of rentals per week. All we're simply asking is that if school is not in session, that consideration would be allowed to be able to rent the pavilion for up to the 4 party planning sessions we currently have per week. And that was what this recommendation is, because right now people cannot reserve that space and they cannot rent it because of the way the ordinance is stated. Does anyone have any questions with regard to that?
No, that's helpful. Thank you. Or I didn't have any questions. Did you?
No, I don't.
Thank you, Nicole.
You're welcome.
Okay. Melissa?
We're getting all our stuff done first. Thank you for letting us have all
So
of our
such
stuff
a
Well, it
back
was-
to back. This never happens,
It
not
was
in
designed
20
to move
years I've been
quickly. It
here.
has been a total
I just
failure,
want to
but-
piggyback on what she said. I know we had one person, a neighbor in particular, who was very upset about people coming from outside of the neighborhood and wrecking it and being really loud, not cleaning up, and having multiple parties and having cars parked in that. That was the biggest complaints that we got about the pavilion rentals. And I do think that this isn't trying to make, I just, again, cannot emphasize more, it's not gonna be more rentals than it is right now.
Right.
It's gonna be the same exact, it's just gonna make it possible to have it on holidays.
Right.
So Alec, was that the
Yeah,
only
that's the same.
feedback that you
Yeah.
got was, because a lot of protections have been put in place on the pavilion to prevent the impact on neighbors close by, and a lot of not punitive, but precautionary, amounts of money set aside that they would forfeit should they ignore those restrictions, and so I think all that's been addressed. I think it's good,
Yeah, thank you, Phil. And on that point, I asked Ashley just to clarify what those dollar amounts are, just for the record, so that we're all clear on it. Ashley,
Yeah.
the rental.
Right. So for a resident, it's $100 fee with a $250 refundable deposit upon proof of returning the pavilion in a clean state. They send us pictures and all that. For non-residents, it's a $300 rental fee with a $500 deposit that is returnable.
And those deposits are forfeited should their guests park where they're not supposed to park, and
Right.
all of that type of stuff. So
the rules.
protections are put in place to try to minimize the impact on the neighboring residents and that type of thing. When the park pavilion rentals on the weekend was revisited, a lot of protections were put in place, and those same protections would apply to these other dates that, the holidays. So,
Thank you, Phil. Roxanne?
I move to allow pavilion rental during the weekday when school is not in session, not to exceed more than 4 events per week.
You've heard the motion. Is there a
I
second?
second that.
You've heard the motion by Ms. McKee and a second by Mr. McDuffie. Further discussion? Hearing none.
I'm
Okay, I heard some.
sorry, I guess I'm a little baffled by why the when kids are not in school is part of the limitation.
I think they're just trying to allow it for school, because it's birthday parties.
Well, yeah, but you got a 4-year-old birthday party, 4-year-olds aren't in school anyway.
Good point.
That is a good point.
I
We
mean,
could amend
I
the
don't,
motion.
I have had 4-year-old birthday parties at the park before, and so I just,
Parks are well suited for a 4-year-old birthday party.
They was great, and that's why I'm just wondering
And that brings up
if
another.
we're not
Yeah.
if we're not increasing the number per week,
Right.
why does it matter if the kids are in school or not?
I agree with you completely. That does bring another point, which is, I'm assuming the same time frames of 10 till, so the same time frames.
Yes.
So that, just for clarity, I agree with you. I don't see the need to say just when school's not. Yeah.
Okay,
Is there a response to
Great.
that? You look like.
recognize Miss Nicole.
Thank you. As it stands right now, as it's written, only Saturdays and Sundays. Children are not in school starting May 26th through August 16th. They are unable to use the pavilion for a birthday party any other time except on a Saturday or Sunday. And if you're trying to coordinate multiple families coming in to support and celebrate their child, their grandchild, it's going to be very difficult to be able to only do that on a Saturday or a Sunday. And there could be a Thanksgiving break coming up and families in town. I want to celebrate my child. I'm not able to do that on a Wednesday because the rules in the ordinance, the way it's written right now, is a Saturday or Sunday only. So this is what we're asking for consideration for flexibility, for open-mindedness, and for support behind the Park Commission, who got this to vote and brought it to you.
But
Well,
I,
Okay,
hold
and
on,
I'm not
hold on,
sure you're
hold up.
arguing against
Hold up,
what we
hold
are.
up, hold up, hold up, hold up.
I thought Sarah was
It's-
opposing it.
It's,
No, she's
No.
not.
She was,
Hold
no, she was nothing
Year
about
round.
any day.
Any day.
all right,
Sorry.
it's trending in the right direction. Okay,
Take the temperature.
we got it. Would you like to amend?
I'll amend my motion. My motion, as amended, is to allow pavilion rental during the weekday not to exceed more than 4 events per week.
Do you have a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Ms. McKee, a second by Mr. McDuffie. Is there further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed say no.
No.
Being three ayes, you threw me for a loop. Three ayes, being 3 ayes, 1 nay, motion carries.
And for the record, I want to clarify why I voted this. Is because this isn't what the Park Commission passed us. They passed these during only while school is out, and I want to understand why that reason was. There could have been something behind it, and that's why I voted no.
It is noted for the record.
Okay.
That's why I asked, and we didn't get any.
And we are moving on.
Wow. Someone.
Any reason, so.
Closing agenda item number 11, moving to agenda item number 12, discussion and possible action on an ordinance amending the date for assessing late fees to utility service charges. Ms. Wayman.
So a few months ago, we brought an ordinance before council to clean up the late fee process as outlined in our code. It was kind of all over the place. It was in 2 different sections, and we cleaned them up to become to where they both matched, and it made sense for water and wastewater charges, which are both charged at the same time anyways. What we did find out, we put a section in there about late fees, and that they were to be assessed 30 days after a bill was due. So on the 31st day, I guess, if you still had not paid that bill, we would assess a late fee of 5%. What we found out since then is that our accounting system does not actually allow for that. You have to assess that late fee before a new bill is generated, which would then, if you already generated another bill, it would put the late fee on the most recent bill. And so we need to make sure that another bill, a subsequent bill, hasn't been generated before we charge that late fee on the previous one. So currently, bills are due on the 23rd of the month. That could be potentially as late as the 25th if that falls on a weekend. So it may possibly fall on a Saturday, so the bills aren't due till the 25th, and we bill the first week of the following month. So there's a short window in there to assess late fees if we're going to on that previous bill. And so we went with 3 business days to try to account for any holidays where maybe there's a couple days where we're not counting those as business days, so we don't bump up against that time when we're assessing or when we're doing the new bills. So this is a simple change to the ordinance, just to change it from 30 days to 3 business days.
And as we've talked about in the past, council, well, first of all, let me say we're very excited to have Veronica on board, our new utility billing manager. She's already really making a difference and fitting in great with the staff. I think everyone's really pleased to have her, and we are too. She's got great experience, over 10 years of experience with Encode, and she's going to be a vital asset. As we've talked about in the past, council, we do have a number of late and outstanding water bills that continue to not be paid. As we all know, we took a look at that policy over the COVID years and made a conscious decision to be very flexible and lax about that policy. We are now going to start making moves in the other direction to enforce that payment on a very strict basis. And this is part of that, and we want to get all of these kind of nuts and bolts worked out before we begin that process of being more strict on those water payments. We will be looking at cutoffs, and we will be letting folks know that if you're 6 months in arrears, you are. It is very possible that you will have your
6
water cut
months?
off. There's a couple
6
like
months
that.
is very
I've got a
generous.
few.
Yes. we have been very generous for years, and we're about to stop. So anyway, just letting everybody know on the record, that's where we are with that. And so if you get calls or complaints, it is not because we have not been extremely flexible for the last several years.
Yes, and I'll also mention we intend to do a pretty robust informational kind of campaign with those, including bill messages, a letter in a utility bill, Facebook posts, website posts. So I think we're probably looking at January to be the first time we charge a late fee, just so we give everybody ample time. We're also calling a lot of those people that seem to have fallen through the cracks in the last couple of years and trying to work out those before we get anywhere where we would be
We're
looking
doing
at
our
late
best
fees.
to do our due diligence and make sure that we've made every effort that everyone is up to speed. They know what the issue is, because obviously we've had some billing issues in the last year, but we do feel like we've worked through those kinks. And especially with Veronica on board now, who really has a depth of knowledge on it. So we're continuing to do our due diligence and make sure everyone is informed, and we've spoken to them. But pretty quickly we're going to move to a little bit more a firm stance on this issue. So. Okay. Anything else? So we do need a motion to make this change.
I move to accept the ordinance as posed in the packet, ordinance number 2022-10-19-12, that amends the city's code of ordinances, part 1, chapter 22, article 2, section 22-30, payment.
Heard the motion by Ms. McKee. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Ms. McKee and a second by Mr. Robinson. Is there discussion?
3 days seems really short.
It does. I had this discussion. They asked me what I thought, and I said 2 weeks, and then they said, well, that's still too long. So it really does have to do with our ENCO with the billing
Right.
system. I'm with you, and my comment was, if Visa can give me 5 or 7 days, why can't we? But the answer to that really is the dynamics and kind of how we're hamstrung with our own billing system. I even suggested 5 days, but then looking at the calendar, that could still, if the days fall on certain business days versus the weekend, it could still cause a problem with our billing. So I do agree with you.
And the 3 days is because we're allowing such a long length of time to
Well, but we
pay,
don't.
isn't it?
No, we don't, because you get the bill at the
Yeah.
beginning of the month and you have 2 weeks to pay it.
Okay.
And then you're saying if you don't pay it within that 2 weeks,
Right.
then 3 days later, you get the finance charge
Yeah.
hit on you. So with your Visa bill, you get a month,
Right.
so, to pay instead of 2 weeks.
Right. They actually like you not to pay so they can. But no, I understand, and I do think we still will have some flexibility if we're late getting the bills out or something like that. And we'll be sensitive to that on our end for sure. It's also an incentive to get more of our residents to the e-billing and to the ACH deposit option. I know my family has gone to that, and it's much easier. So theoretically, you get a few of these late charges, and you decide that it's probably in your best interest to go ahead and make it easier on yourself and just do the ACH or the e-billing process. So we're trying to move folks to that. We have had actually one of the upsides to some of the bumps in the road that we've had this year is getting that ACH thing worked out. Michaela, thank you for that. She's done great research. She's our ACH queen. But trying to move people to that, and we have had a lot of success with that, and we think this will help continue to move people to that process. All right. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 4 ayes, no nays, motion carries. That we will close this agenda item number 12 and move to agenda item number 13, discussion and possible action to modify the current designated construction holiday calendar, and recognize Mr. McDuffie.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. This is my item. At the previous city council meeting, we adopted the construction holiday calendar since. We've had one occurrence, that being Columbus Day, Indigenous Peoples Day. We did get one letter of feedback, upset about that, but I also got several calls personally, based on the fact that it's a federal holiday and construction was occurring and was loud, and also children are out of school on federal holidays, and so I expressed to those people, I think we screwed up, and when I think we have screwed up, I think the first thing to do is to admit that and try to amend it. So that is what I'm trying to do here. The next federal holiday is President's Day. Once again, kids are going to be out of school. It's a federal holiday. I think we ought to not allow construction on that day. And then the other day is Texas Independence Day. To my knowledge, that is not a federal holiday, although it really should be. But
do agree with that.
And kids are in school. They're apparently, when I checked the Eames calendar, they're out of school the next day. But so that one, city staff will not be here to answer calls. So when you have construction and you don't have city staff here, yes, there is Officer Dan Respi directly, but not all citizens know that, so then they call City Hall and aren't able to get somebody, and so I do think it might be prudent to prohibit construction on that day as well, given the fact that city staff won't be here. So I definitely think we need to have the federal holidays be excluded from construction, and I do think there are strong arguments to just say if city staff is not here, not to have construction on those days, but I'm more flexible on that one.
So is that to solve one part of that problem, or to help with it? Could we change our call? I don't even know what you call it. When you call and you answer and it says, if you want to talk to building, dial whatever. Do we have enough numbers to add the code enforcement officer?
I'm sure we do. Yeah.
So that we could have that as one of the options if somebody's calling in and
Yeah,
they
I think so.
have an issue, that we could have, and that way
That's a good idea.
that would even work on, because if people don't know to call the police on a day when the city hall is closed, because police are still working, that way that would transfer over to somebody in the police department, and we would be able to get in touch with somebody that could respond.
Sure.
I still think that we probably should have included the federal holidays as, dates that we don't allow. But that would it was also help on the weekend too.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody calls in, and that way they would know who to contact if they have, somebody's banging away at 8 o'clock on Saturday morning.
Sure. And I think we
They-
can
they-
also revisit the phone. We have a holiday message, I think, that our phones have, and a weekend message. So we could revisit those and make those a little more clear, including code enforcement, since that wasn't really a department itself before.
Well, right. We didn't have, but that seems like something that we could add now that we have somebody that is dedicated to that.
Sure.
And that would
Agreed.
help that work out. So.
Yeah.
Okay. And council, we're happy we'll administer it however you want. I tend to think that it just prolongs the pain for those who are next to building projects, but I'm not really passionate either way, so.
A lot of them aren't working on days that they should be working. So if they want to speed up the process, they could work more on the days that they're supposed to be working, and not working on days when people are
Bet that
home on a holiday.
a number of homeowners would probably agree with you on that point. So. Okay. So, happy to take a motion.
Well, based on, I think, Ms. Hudson's excellent recommendation, I think I make a motion that we amend our current construction prohibited holiday calendar to include President's Day and Columbus Indigenous Peoples' Day in line with our federal holidays. And I think for now we can keep Texas Independence Day. They can hammer away on that one.
You've heard the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
You have a motion by Mr. McDuffie, a second by Ms. Hudson. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Being 4 ayes, no nays, motion carries. With that, we will move on to agenda item number 14, discussion and possible action on status of online message board implementation. I'll recognize Ms. Hudson, and I know that Ms. Wayman has thoughts on this one.
I just hadn't heard. I had a resident ask me about this and hadn't heard an update, so I just kind of wondered where we were at.
All right, I have asked this question as well, and I know the answer, but I won't ruin the surprise. So, not really a surprise, but Ms. Wayman, if you would take this one, please.
Big surprise. Apologize for getting this in the packet today. Been working with our IT folks. They've been trying to figure out a solution to the server space issue that this would require. We don't have our own servers currently. We are hosted, I guess, remotely on servers. This would require its own server rental, and a lot of the options we were looking at were coming in probably over the amount that council authorized. I think was about $3,000. But we did discover the city of San Marcos uses a product that seems very user-friendly and very easy to understand. And I spoke to them over there, and they really liked the program and were happy with it. And so it's actually going to come out to under $1,000 a year. There may be some initial setup fees and things like that. So I'm going to work with our IT folks in the next month to try to get that onboarded. It will take a little work with them and our website company, and then also with Zenforo, which is the cloud and the software that we'll be using to customize it to our abilities. But it looks like it does. If City of San Marcos is using it, I can guarantee it's compliant with the Open Meetings Act rules. And so hopefully we're able to say, hey, set it up the same way they have it. And so I don't have a timeline on getting that put in, but it looks like it's definitely going to fall within our budget. And so we will take care of that as soon as we can, and be happy to share information with the public on how to log in and how to see the messages. So
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
And just, I know we've talked about this before, but just for clarification, it is just for the elected members to partake in, but it is viewable by everyone. So it's not a back and forth situation, but
Like, I would mean like residents can't.
they can
view, but
it's a
not.
view only. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
They can't go on the message board, but they have our email addresses.
Yeah,
So
they can email us, and
know
then
where
we
to
can,
get us.
But what is it? It means that we can communicate.
we
I
can
guess.
talk amongst ourselves on
Right.
Okay.
on that. so.
without violating the
Right.
Open Meetings Act.
Okay.
That's what this.
And
is
that's all. It's all statutory. That's not.
Yeah.
Also, for the record, that's not us saying that they're not going to have that right, but that's the way it's outlined in statute. So. Okay. I don't guess we have any action on that, do we?
Nope.
no.
That was
Okay.
just an update.
Then we'll move on. We'll close agenda item number 14 and move to agenda item number 15. Discussion and possible action to increase the number of regular meetings of the Rolling Wood City Council to a minimum of twice per year. This is a little gift.
No, twice per month.
We like where you're going, Mr. Mayor.
Freudian slip. To a minimum of twice per month. And this was Ms. McKee's agenda item. Roxanne?
Probably those, you might remember when I was mayor, I had included an agenda item back then to try to increase the number of regular meetings of the city council to twice per month, which at that time the council did not have an appetite for. So I wanted to revisit it. I do think that the city could be more nimble and more agile, particularly given the pace of the rapid pace of redevelopment here in the city, which has been the case. But particularly since we are most likely about to embark on a comprehensive review of the residential code of ordinances, and we'll likely be making some amendments to that. That's going to require a lot of citizen input, workshops, public surveys, public hearings, and it took over a year, I believe, for the comprehensive plan that we just did, and that seemed to be primarily focused on commercial as opposed to the residential. And I note that for a few months now, we've been contending with a couple of the what I believe are unintended consequences of the current residential code. For example, the potential for cantilevering and getting additional living space into a setback, or the potential for having things extend over the majority of a setback and so forth. And in trying to deal with these issues, in part, we have been, I mean, wouldn't you know it, tonight's the exception. We've got probably the shortest meeting since I've been back on council, potentially. But we've had a lot of meetings that have run into the wee hours of the morning, and I would anticipate, and particularly if the bond propositions, or if they are passed by the citizens next month, I think there's going to be a whole lot of decisions and a lot of work to do. And I think that we could be more efficient. I have spoken about this with the mayor of Westlake Hills, and she says she's able to get people typically out by 8:30 or 9 o'clock. They've been meeting, I believe they convene at 6. And she said it's not as onerous and it's more efficient. So, I mean, it prompted me in part to go ahead and revisit this. I do think it is a problem with transparency. When meetings are extended into the late hours and into the early morning, I do not think that promotes transparency in government, and I think that is terribly important. I also think it could be, I think it's burdensome for city staff. I think that it might deter people in the city of Rollingwood from running for city council, because they, especially if they have to be at work early the next morning and trying to serve on city council and going until the wee hours of the morning, could really impact their ability to work well that day. So I think that more frequent regular city council meetings, twice per month, is what I would propose. They should lead to shorter meetings. I have suggested putting a time limit on the meetings. You could start them at 6:30 and run until 10:30 or something along those lines, so that people can plan around that, and you won't have people, especially staff, driving long distances late at night. And I did, at least during this period of time, which I think, I mean, realistically, you're looking at a year or two or more to deal with the comprehensive review of the code of ordinances. I could be wrong, but I took note that you've got a list of cities here, Westlake Hill, that already meet at least twice per month. Westlake Hill, Sunset Valley, Bee Cave, Pflugerville, Liberty Hill, Cedar Park, Brushy Creek, Leander, Kyle, Buda, Round Rock, Austin. So that would be more the norm. Now, I know it would require an amendment to the Code of Ordinances, because, Section 2-56A calls, right now it calls for at least one regular city council meeting per month on the third Wednesday. So the potential is there to amend that if need be, or just vote to add another meeting, I suppose. So I'm throwing it out there for you all to see if there is now perhaps an appetite for it or not.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Discussion, I have a few thoughts, but I'll open it to council.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd be okay with it if the meetings were shorter, but also we got, you know, a new council coming in next. I'm glad you brought this up this time. Why didn't you should have
That's
like
why.
6 months 6 months ago? But I'm just kidding. Just think-
I'm not. and
Ah!
I'll get to that in a second.
But yeah, I'm open to the idea, just depending on what everyone else thinks.
Well, I will say, love you, Roxanne, but you are proposing this on your last council meeting
Yeah.
of your term.
I tried when I was mayor. I tried, and I've watched the same process happening as we have confronted some of these issues here.
Right.
And the city is just not as nimble as I think would be desirable.
Right.
Yeah.
So of all of these other cities that meet twice per month, how many of them have, like, council members who that's their job?
I couldn't tell you that.
Or the population of those cities. I mean,
Right.
Pflugerville, I think, has 60,000 people.
Well, I mean, City of Austin, that's a paid position too, so,
Right, yeah.
you know, they're just doing their job and they're just doing it in a different place twice a month, but, instead of their offices.
I mean, true, but I mean, the same holds true. Why, if we are such a small city and we don't, and I agree, it can be a strain on staff resource, no question about that, and that's something that would have to be looked at.
Right.
But we are a small city, and you'd think we'd be able to accommodate that.
I'm hoping that if we get the message board working and we can actually get some of this, you know, discussed on the message board, that we would not have to spend as much time discussing some of these items in the meetings, and that would reduce the time required for discussion on controversial topics. And also the comprehensive strike force, comprehensive plan strike force had separate meetings instead of, it was not a council meeting. And so I think that if we have the same sort of process on the review of the, which is what the Planning and Zoning Commission was urging, is for us to have a group similar to that, that would be a separate meeting that would be scheduled as needed instead of requiring 2 meetings a month, that we could have additional meetings as needed instead of mandating 2 meetings a month.
Well, so I'm in favor of it. I do have an appetite for this. And I do think that if there aren't enough items, or it doesn't look like there's the need for the second meeting in the month, then that meeting can be canceled.
Well, you know, a few things, you know, in terms of detraction from running for office, I think it's much more of a detraction from folks wanting to run for office to have to commit two nights of their schedule to meeting as opposed to one long night. I know that's where I am, and I very well would have made a different decision had you brought this a few months ago about my decision to run. In terms of transparency, I think we've got 2 people online right now, and Shanti and Kevin. So I'm not sure that having more opportunity for the same 4 people to attend this meeting every month is going to have the desired effect on transparency. But my main concern is that of staff resources. It's not, the staff is not just in charge of, and as you know, you're looking at the staff that's in charge of not just the preparation for this meeting, but all boards and commissions. And the 2 weeks, really the week, but a week and a half leading into a city council meeting is extremely resource heavy on our staff, and that is being done on the heels and at the same time as all of the preparation and work that they have to put into the other boards and commissions. We don't have a superintendent of parks. We don't have, we have a utility billing manager, but she's not the one preparing the things for the utility billing, for the utility commission. Planning and zoning falls on really Ashley. So it's not just about preparing for a city council meeting, it's preparing for all of those other things and then adding an entire another preparation session. And that preparation is not going to be any less, whether it's a shorter meeting or not. And I sincerely doubt that those meetings would actually be shorter. I think you're just going to be committing to 2 nights to go to 12 o'clock. But so
Well, that's
I'm
why you would put a deadline on it,
Yeah.
a time limit.
yeah I try to.
You could do like a time limit on the first one, and then like the second meeting a month is like the one that, push things basically to the second meeting, and that one you let that one go just like this one, I guess. But I don't know. I mean, I feel like we have people that are running now, and like, just like you were saying, like you didn't know this. So that's one thing. We probably should just wait and discuss
I
this
think that
later.
would be a hard thing to drop on
Yeah.
somebody who is running for office and going, "Wait, that's not what I signed up for,"
Yeah.
Kinda
That's a
change-
valid point. I
changing-
mean, I
changing
will
the
say
rules in the
that
middle of the election.
when I discuss with people the possibility of them joining us on this illustrious group,
Dice.
that oftentimes, and it may just be lip service, but oftentimes people are saying there's no way that I'm going to get on something and stay there till 1 in the morning or midnight. Like, I just can't do that. So that it has been the objection that I most often hear. But I do agree that this might need to be revisited should we decide to do so after a new council comes in, because it is kind of switching boats midstream on them.
Well, I would suggest that we get our message board up and running and seat the new council and see how that works and see if that helps reduce the time required for meetings. And then if after that we think that we need to do something different, and get the process in place for our comprehensive review of the residential building code. And once we have all those pieces in place and we can see how things are working, then we can reassess. But I would hate to commit to it right now with all of those things kind of pending.
Well, I didn't really expect a commitment tonight, quite frankly. I mean, I put it out here because I know we have a council member, but Brown is not here. And I think it would be only fair to have her weigh in on it. And we also have an election next month, but I at least wanted to get it on the agenda for your consideration.
We appreciate your efforts.
Yes, ma'am.
Shanti Jaykumar, 3309 Park Hills Drive. I actually had a call with Ms. McKee and thought it was a good idea. But today, listening to all the different, I can offer another idea that our attorney can ascertain. But when I was on the council, one of the local government code or whatever code is there says that you don't have to post the meeting again if you have it on the very next day. You have the agenda posted. You are just stopping the meeting where you want to, and then continue back on the meeting the next day. And that's in the local government code. So we did not pursue it, even though there were times when we were here till 3 and 4 in the morning. This was back in 2009 and 10. But that was an idea that I had looked at in the code. So there's no extra preparation. You have everything in, and you decide, okay, we have covered this much of the agenda. We continue tomorrow for 1 or 2 hours maybe. So maybe Charlie Zek can look at it, and y'all can consider that.
Thank you, Shanti.
As a-
That's, yeah, we can take a look at
Yeah.
that. Thank you. We'll take a look at that. We'll also look at bringing coffee to you guys. So
I am not drinking coffee at 10 o'clock at night. I'm sorry, because then I will never go to sleep.
everybody's apparently
But I'm
pretty
in
tired.
favor of
so.
it, Mayor.
Well, I mean, one other comment in terms of, transparency. I know that in the past, over the time, because I think I'm on year 11 now of doing volunteer work here, but I mean, we go through periods, especially when there's a controversy brewing, we go through periods where there's actually a number of residents who are trying to participate, and they're discouraged because they think they're going to be sitting around until midnight before the agenda item gets called, or 11 p.m. and so they're like, I'm just not going to do that. So it's hard to know if the meetings were run more efficiently and you knew that it was going to be taken up by a certain time, you might have more participation on a more regular basis, as opposed to just when the controversy occurs. When the comprehensive plan was in place, didn't the task force, the strike force, meet? Didn't they get to the point where they're meeting once a week? Once a week.
Yeah, but instead of 13 people, it's down to like 3 or 4. Most of the members didn't show up.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of it was on Zoom.
Right, but a lot of the task force members did not participate.
I attended every single meeting.
Yeah.
Shouldn't surprise you, right?
Okay. There's not a motion.
No
Doesn't sound like there's a motion. All right, with that, we'll close out agenda item number 15, move to agenda item number 16, discussion of possible action to review applications and make appointments to the Utility Commission. I think Ashley or Desiree, I think we have one position open.
Yes.
Applicants,
We have one spot on the Utility Commission open, 2 applicants, Wendy Hunley and Walt Rollison. And I believe Wendy had applied first. They both went back in and redid their applications
oh, that's
after
right. We made
direction.
changes last month. That's
Mhm.
right. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Right.
Made changes last month to this section of the code, and we did have reapplications by those 2 individuals. And this is all that stands between you guys and home.
Well, I have
You're the
spoken to
liaison.
Walt Rollison, and I think he brings some knowledge that would be useful on the Utility Commission. So as a liaison of the Utility Commission, I would move that we appoint Walt Rollison to the Utility Commission.
You have
Second.
a motion by Mr. McDuffie. Did I hear a second? The second by Ms. Hudson. Is there discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Four ayes,
Adjourn.
4 ayes, no nays, motion carries. And a motion to adjourn right on the heels of that by Ms. McKee. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
4 ayes, no nays, we're adjourned.